yo ho, a pirate's life for me. Morgan ain't got nothing on me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this reflection on the Pirates of the Caribbean saga. All 5 movies now. I can't believe there's 5 films now. With the release of Pirates of the Caribbean Salazar's Revenge, or Dead Men Tell No Tales, wherever you live in the world, we are 3 of us are going to reflect on all 5 movies, as we've now seen and reviewed all of them and ranked them as well. I'm here with Harry Thomas and Jack McCullough. So I'm gonna let Harry go first because I have a feeling his words are gonna be a bit briefer than Jack's and mine. So Harry, would you like with the Curse of the Black Pearl?
Thanks, Ollie. Well, yeah, obviously when Disney created the theme park ride Pirates of the Caribbean 50 years ago now, can you believe? And when a movie
was 50 years ago?
Yeah, the ride was created at Disneyland back in 1967. Yeah.
Oh shit! I didn't even realise. I thought it was much later than that.
Oh yeah, so it's kind of special that we're doing this reflection on the ride's 50th anniversary, and
you learn something new every day.
Absolutely. And when a movie was announced about based on Pirates of the Caribbean, nobody had any interest in it when they first heard it, but once they saw it, it totally blew them away, and I totally see why. I won't go as far as calling Curse of the Black Pearl a perfect movie, but it's a darn great one. Yeah, this is still remains my favorite of the 5 14 years later, and I'm glad this is well universally agreed as the best. It's just a simple fun blockbuster that you can follow easily, have a blast with, has absolutely laugh out loud, gut-bustingly funny comedy, and an outstanding performance by Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow. This role will forever changed his career. There's a reason he got nominated for Best Actor, because he's just absolutely brilliant, and this is my favorite performance from him in the series. And just and Barbossa, played by Jeffrey Rush, is also simply fantastic. Probably my favorite villain in the series, and he would also obviously go on when he reprised his role in all 5 movies. He's one of the only cast members to do so. Yeah, his voice is just so great. You better start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one. Yeah, and the effects and the production design are absolutely flawless. Yeah, they put their heart and soul into making this movie look and feel like a pirates film. And of course, it's a pirates film. We've got to have plenty of swashbuckling action, which this movie has plenty to offer. The attack on Port Royal, just the ocean battle, the final duel between Jack and Barbossa is simply epic, and as well as it also has a terrific supporting cast. Like Elizabeth's father is utterly charming, and Norrington, obviously being Elizabeth's fiance, he would go on a
funny. Harry, you should say that nobody really pays attention to Jonathan Pryce in these films, because I think he's actually rather good in the first one, and also Norrington as well. They're both good characters.
Yeah, they're both pretty underappreciated. I say, yeah, everybody just talks about Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley, but these guys deserve way more attention. And yeah, and obviously Norrington being Elizabeth's fiance, he would go on a fascinating character arc throughout this trilogy, and comedy is one of the best parts of the movie. Yeah, I always laugh at this one the most, which is why this is the most rewatchable. Just the "why is the rum gone" joke, just classic. Oh my god! Although they poorly imitate it in Dead Man's Chest, well, then here it is perfect. And the only real criticism I would have with this movie is that Will and Elizabeth are the 2 weakest characters in this franchise. I'm sorry, they're just bland. They are boring. It's not Keira or Orlando's fault, both talented actors, but they're just there for star power and to get butts in seats, really. But aside from that, the music is spectacular. The dun 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 theme is one of the greatest movie themes I have ever heard, and yeah, it is just an absolutely.
I agree about the thing.
And yeah, it's just an absolutely excellent blockbuster, and yeah, it's such a rollicking start to what would be one of the most successful franchises in movie history. Yeah, I doubt they realized how far this franchise would go and how many people it would really win over. So
Imagine all the people. Sorry, I couldn't
oh
help but resist that.
yeah, that's exactly what it did. It won its fans over and deservedly so. Yeah, I am gonna say that Black Pearl a well-earned 9 out of 10. So I'll let you two take it away.
Excellent. Jack and Ori. Hello. I thank you, Jack. Actually, Harry, you forgot to mention about like Jack the monkey.
Oh yeah, the monk. Yeah, the monkey is just brilliant.
I'm here.
All yours, Jack.
Yeah. Well, Curse of the Black Pearl. I have to agree with Harry on this one. Out of all the Pirates films, I think this one's easily the best. I remember watching this the first time on DVD because I didn't see it in the cinema. But you know, Curse of the Black Pearl. I mean, you know, going into the film, I think a lot of people were sort of skeptical because it's based off a fairground ride, and you know, I mean, the casting for this was quite. Originally, they wanted Robert De Niro to play Captain Jack Sparrow. I mean, I'm kind of glad that he turned it down because I think he would have been too old, and it was just been weird if like, he was like.
Can you
What?
imagine him? Can you imagine him like doing his like Godfather lines in Captain Jack Sparrow? Where's the rum gone? The rum is gone.
Huh?
I don't like it.
Jones, huh? Like, it's a circle of trust, huh? I'm talking to you. Yeah. No. Yeah. So they were thinking of De Niro, but I think well, he basically turned it down. That's why I did Stardust later. So it'd be interesting if he was if they were on the fifth one with him by now. But no, I mean, I think Johnny Depp in the role, he's very good. I mean, I don't think, I mean, personally, I don't think he's the best performance in the film. We'll get to him in a minute, but he is very good in this film. I mean, this film is just a fun sort of action blockbuster ride. I mean, it's just a lot of fun. The plot out of all of them is probably the best, and like, you know, the whole plot of like these pirates, you know, who are basically got this curse of Cortez's gold, and I think the opening is really, you know, quite interesting, where we see a young Elizabeth, and then we see, you know, Norrington, and then we find Will, who's sort of, who has this like necklace, which is a piece of the pirate's gold, and yeah, the theme tune is brilliant. You know, the you know, just epic. I mean, you know, I mean that theme is always, you know, it gets you pumped for watching a pirates film. But yeah, I mean, the opening's interesting. I think the cast here is really, I think the cast is excellent. Really. Uh, I think Jeremy Bruckheimer and Gore Verbinski did a good job in casting here. I mean, Johnny Depp as Kamjak, I mean, his introduction is hilarious. Like when you see the ship come into harbor and it sinks, slowly sinks, and he arrives on. He arrives. I mean, I'm talking about the other characters. I mean, yeah, I agree. Jonathan Pryce is great. I mean, Jonathan Pryce is always good in nearly everything, and Commodore Norrington as well. I mean, the actor Hunting with Matt Damon before, so I mean, he's proved himself, and I just think that the cast is really well done. I think the production is great as well. Like the ships and the sets and all that are great. Like the Black Pearl itself is great. You got some really good comedy here as well. I've got to say, like you got those two pirates. You got those two navy guys that Jack has a disagreement over, and he tries to steal the ship, and and you got those other two pirates later, the pirate, the wooden eyeball and all that. I mean, I think the comic relief here and the comedy works very well. I mean, as for the other cast, I mean, Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom, I actually think they're okay here. I mean, out of all the films, I think they probably give their best performance here. I mean,
I agree, but that's not really clear much.
Not
I mean,
really.
I don't think. I mean, I don't think they overdo it with the romance here. Unlike the later films, which is good. Like, I mean, Will. I mean, I think Orlando Bloom. Here as well, he's fine, and yeah, I mean, they're both they're just sort of eye candy, really. Like Harry said, they're there to get bums on seats.
I mean, it's funny, in the second film, you look at Stellan Skarsgård and Orlando Bloom together. You're like, how could you produce something that good looking? You're covered in barnacles, mate.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes out with like a big tentacle coming out of his arse or something like.
Oh. You will watch this, sir.
Yeah.
David Jones just appears out of nowhere.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, but I mean, their introduction isn't bad in this. Like, you see Will makes a sword, and I think Keira Knightley, as Elizabeth, I mean, I didn't really notice her as a kid, but rewatching these films, she's like really, I mean, damn, she's beautiful. I mean, that's one thing I will say, that she's good to look at least. I mean,
she's actually quite young. She's younger than she looks. She's only about 19, 20 or something like that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is Orlando Bloom's like 10 years older than her, and that's interesting as well. He was about 30 when he made this, I think. Yeah, well, 28, 29 or something like that. I mean, there's about 10 years between them, but they don't look that.
I think he literally got onto this project Rings.
Yeah, I mean, and Beckham, I think. But I mean, yeah, one thing I will say is at least she's good to look at in these three films. I mean, she's stunning, and it's interesting that like sort of that subplot with the corset, and then when she faints and Jack comes to the rescue, and I just love that. Scene where it's like, you remember this is the day when you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow, and then like there's that action scene, and it's funny when Norrington, like, he basically is like, you're about the worst pirate I've ever seen. Some flaws in this movie. I mean, one point my mom made was that scene where he gets away and he's got the handcuffs on, the zip line when the handcuffs are on. How does he throw the chain over the zip line when he has the handcuffs on? That doesn't really make sense. But I mean, the action scene is good. That's I mean, one thing I will say, Gore Verbinski does the action well. I mean, it's just a fun romp, and then when you get to the stuff with Barbossa, played by Jeffrey Rush, that's when the film really gets like really interesting. And I think Jeffrey Rush as Barbossa, for me, he's the best performance of the film, and he's the best character in the entire series. I just love him as Barbossa. Like, hello, Jack. Like, he's just brilliant, and he's like, like Harry said, you better start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one, and he's just brilliant. I mean, his look, it's sort of, that ridiculous hat that he wears. I mean, Jeffrey Rush really puts everything into it, and for me, he's the sort of standout performance of the film. And it's interesting as well. That scene where they attacked, and there's sort of the other oncurring joke that the Harry didn't mention was the parlay joke that they keep bringing up, which is quite funny. Like she's like, parlay, I invoke the act of parlay.
Oh
And then
yeah,
she does,
yeah.
yeah, and then she tries to use it on the captain, and it's like he's like, they're more a set of guidelines than they are actual rules. And I just love
Actually,
that scene.
that's the thing. Like they introduced this whole thing with the pirate code, but it's like there's no point to it. Like in At World's End, they have the massive book, which is the code, the rules. Like, but like nobody gives a shit about them. Like, so why have it if they're just going to be ignored? Why have the rules in the first place?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I don't get that, but it's a funny sort of joke, and it's a funny scene where she has to basically well no, when he's like telling her like you don't need to use manners, and she just basically starts like grabbing like the food with her hands and eating it, and the scene as well where we see Jack, like he's in a jail cell and Will frees him and they go off on a journey. I mean, one thing I will say about the film is that I think it is maybe a little bit too long. I mean, I think all Pirates films are slightly too long. I mean, I think this is 2.5 hours. Maybe you could have cut out film.
Well, this one's
I mean,
pretty short, to be fair.
yeah. I mean, it'll get worse as we get to the sequels, but no, I mean that stuff's good. And then when he get out of the jail, and then when they go off, and yeah, I mean, one other thing I didn't get was that bit where they're with the boat underneath the water. Like, how come the water didn't fill up when they had the boat underneath? I mean, that only works when the boat's on the surface. If you pull the boat, underwater, like the water's gonna fill that air pocket. But I mean, when they escape, that's great. I just think the whole like undead crew is really cool. Like the whole plot of the Cortez's gold, and when he explains to her, and like when she runs on board deck and she sees the whole sort of undead crew, and he pops open the bottle of wine, starts drinking it, and that's great. And just I think the climax of the film's great. Like the funny scene where he goes to Tortuga and Jack keeps getting slapped. And
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, and when they're on the island, like Barbossa drops them off, and they're drinking the rum, and she burns the rum. He's like, where's the rum gone? Like, where's the rum gone?
Oh, it must be terrible, Jack, for you to be trapped in the side. Where bloody is now?
Yeah, and I think the finale's great, where they think that Elizabeth is basically Will. Well, basically thinks that she's the heir, and it turns out it's Will, and they you have the final fight, and you see Jack, sort of make a deal with Barbossa, and like when he comes back, Barbossa's like, I can't believe it, and then you have the final fight, and we see Barbossa stab Jack. It turns out he's undead because he took a piece, and then you have the ending where Jack shoots Barbossa, and Will cuts the blood and it goes in the coin. I mean, everybody else in the film dies, but I don't understand why Jack didn't die because he was stabbed. But anyway, it's sort of a nitpick. But yeah, and then I think Barbossa's death's good. He's like, I feel cold or whatever, and then he dies, and and I think the finale is good, like where we see Jack is going to be hanged, and then Will comes to save Jack, and then basically Elizabeth decides to stay with Will, and we see Jack escape to the Black Pearl.
Oh, Jack, by the way, what do you think of Governor Swan when he was fighting the little skeleton hand? I thought that was quite funny.
oh yeah, when he puts it in the drawer, and yeah, that was funny. I mean, overall, I think the first Pirates of the Caribbean film, it's a great film. I mean, it's just it's a fun blockbuster kind of. I guess you could sort of agree there's a lot of sort of a action romp. It's a fun action romp. I mean, I think everything here works. The plot's good. Barbossa, I think Jeffrey Rush is just fantastic as Barbossa, you know, easily the best villain of the series and probably my favorite character of the series as well. I mean, Jeffrey Rush is just completely, you know, puts everything into it, and Johnny Depp is of course great as well. And I mean, I don't really have any complaints with the film. I mean, I think the pacing is actually fine for this because it's one of the shortest of the series. And yeah, I would give this. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Fair enough.
Favorite in the series.
Oh, by the way, what did you think of that at the very end when Will saves Jack from the gallows?
Oh yeah, I think I mentioned that. Yeah, I like that scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they go on the boat, that was good as well. So yeah, just a fun action romp.
Fair enough. Well, as for me, I am almost in agreement. I don't rate this as my favorite film of the series. Sorry, please don't hurt me. But I do really like it. It's yeah. Please don't kill me. It's a very good film, and it's definitely probably one of the biggest surprises ever in cinema. People thought it was going to be shit, but it actually turned out to be really good. Basically, it's a fun action romp, as you guys have said. So I won't repeat too much of that. It's just a hell of a lot of fun. It's just a ton of fun, and the plot is simple, fairly easy to follow. And that was what it needed for the first film of the series. It's a set of characters, apart from Will and Elizabeth, but I'll get to them in a minute. Johnny Depp definitely took on something really interesting when playing Captain Jack Sparrow. This is definitely one of his strongest performances. For me, probably joint with Dead Man's Chest as his best performance. I think he's just as good in this. I love the story because it's simple. I like the fact that the film opens from the viewpoint of Elizabeth. The fact that she's kind of always dreamt about being a pirate, which is kind of strange in a way, but it kind of works. And then as her journey goes on, she kind of gets sick of being involved with pirates. So she realizes, oh, yeah, they're filthy pirates. But the first scene is really good, and it's sort of an interesting introduction. The only thing I don't understand is, like, what happened to Gibbs? Like, he was in the Navy, and then he was demoted. Like, what was he demoted? What happened? He just ended up being a pirate. He was in Tortuga. Did he go through the same journey as Norrington? Was he removed from his post? Like, that was never explained. Like, because Gibbs is also friends of Jack's. So what happened there? That wasn't explained, but that's just a minor thing. And obviously they find as well, he sort of washes up with them, which is interesting. And I kind of like, starts like the Port Royal setting. I think that's really cool. And like Jack said, Johnny Depp's introduction is quite funny when he's on the little boat and it kind of sinks and he's sort of on the top of the mast, the top of the sail, and then he just steps onto the deck. He just walks over. He does that kind of funny walk, which is quite. I think the action is incredible. I love the fight between Jack and Will in Will's what do you call it?
His blacksmith shop, basically.
Yeah, his blacksmith shop. Yeah, thanks, Harry.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. That's a great scene. Yeah,
that was fun.
I think the dialogue is great there as well. You're not a eunuch, are you? I love that. That's sort of an ongoing joke that Jack thinks Will is like a eunuch and he can't get with women. I thought that was cool. And it's just when they go on the top and then, he's like, "You cheated, pirate," and then his assistant, Mr. Brown, just whacks him across the head. He's like, "This shot is not meant for you." And his line is funny. They say, "Excellent work, Mr. Brown. You've assisted in the capture of a dangerous fugitive. Just doing my civil duty, sir." You laugh. And I love Captain Barbossa as well. He's really good. He's so evil. He's ridiculously evil, like pantomime level evil, but it really works. Jeffrey Rush throws himself into this role, and I mean, he's still got it. Like even in the fifth one, which came out a couple of weeks ago, he's still got it. He's still got it. Ask me if I prefer him as a good guy or a bad guy. I honestly can't say. I like him just as much in both sets, because obviously, back to, as a in this movie he's fantastic, and I love his scenes with Elizabeth when he's sort of like taunting her and he's scaring her, when he's telling her the story of Cortez and the treasure and their curse and how they need the blood of a Turner to free them from their curse. And it's just when Elizabeth tries to kill him, and then obviously he takes the knife out of his chest. I'm curious. After killing me, what is it you're planning on doing next? And then she just steps out of the cabin and sees the skeleton crew, and the music rises, the dun 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 dun, and she gets kind of freaked out. I thought that was really effective. That scene, and direction top notch here. He really pulled out all the stops for this. I mean, and he doesn't try to overcomplicate things, even though I don't mind the sort of the bigger stories in the 2 and 3. As for Will and Elizabeth, they're okay, but they're the least interesting characters. I don't think Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley are terrible, but they're just, I mean, this is their best performance out of the 3. I don't really count the 5th one because they're only cameos. So in the first 3, sort of, this is their strongest performances, and you do believe their romance, I'd say, but excuse me, it just doesn't feel, I don't know, it doesn't feel natural. Like they're both kind of stiff in their roles, and I mean they were basically just cast for eye candy. I mean, Orlando Bloom, he's a fucking pretty boy. I mean, don't take this guy seriously as a blacksmith. He's too young to be a blacksmith, and he's too good looking to be a blacksmith. I mean, it's kind of like, I always imagine like there's a subtext to this line when Elizabeth says, and when Will says blacksmith hands are rough. I always imagine that line in a completely wrong context, but sorry, it's making me cough. The film's very long. The pacing is mostly good. Towards the end, like the last action scene in the gallows, we didn't really need that. I mean, we could have had some kind of scene, obviously, so that Jack could be free. But after the big climax, it's like, come on, let's just get to the end now. It's a bit too much. But it's still a cool sequence. Don't get me wrong. It's still a cool sequence. And I like the way the film wraps up with them finally choosing to stay with Will and not Norrington, and Jack getting away. And, it's all happy and whatnot. And, I like the other supporting characters like Jonathan Pryce and Jack Davenport, who plays Norrington. Norrington's an interesting character. I mean, I feel sorry for the guy because he goes through quite a journey. In this film, he's sort of in a high position. He's quite proud of that. He's ranked as Commodore, and he gets his own. Will makes for him, and then, funnily enough, it's funny. I always imagine this as like a trade. He basically trades the sword for Elizabeth. That's how I see it. It's like unintentionally, Will takes Elizabeth from Norrington, and Norrington takes the sword from Will. So, and there's actually a good scene when Will wakes up after the attack, and they're discussing what to do. And he's like, they've taken Elizabeth. And he slams the axe in the table, and he says, "That's not good enough." that was. I mean, sorry, it was a bad impression of Orlando Bloom, but I thought that was good. I mean, you definitely believe the devotion of him. You believe that he's in love with her, definitely. The film's comedy is really nice. It's very funny. It's one of the funniest of the series. I mean, obviously, Johnny Depp provides most of the comedy. The action is incredible. Again, like the big sea battle they have midway through the movie is also very nice. I think that's a great sequence. And obviously, they tossed Elizabeth and Jack into the sea, and then they end up on the island, which is quite good. And obviously, the final climax with the skeleton crew fighting the Navy and Jack fighting Barbossa, and Will and Elizabeth also kicking some ass. That was great. And Governor Swan fighting the little skeleton hand, which made me laugh. What's that noise? There's like a vibration noise going on there. Is somebody's phone going off?
I think it's Harry.
I don't know.
Oh, don't worry, it doesn't matter. Sorry, but it's fine. Yeah, no, I think the music is fantastic. I mean, this is one of the best movie soundtracks of all time. I mean, the sense of adventure. I mean, it's not Hans Zimmer for the first movie. It's someone called Klaus Badlet. I don't know what other scores he's composed for the film. If anybody knows, then do feel free to speak up about it. But I think his score for this movie is absolutely terrific. And as you two have said, it's fantastic. It's so good. I mean, every time one of these movies ends, the credits play and you hear that music, I have to watch the credits for a little bit just to hear that music, because it leaves you on such a good feeling after seeing the movie, especially in the cinema as well, because the sound is so big and it's so epic and it's just wonderful. The visual effects and CGI, they're good. I mean, they're starting to date a little bit, but that's just, that's natural. It's not nobody's fault. But they are very good for the time. Like for 2003, they are excellent. But I don't think they're the best visual effects of the series. We'll get to that in a minute. I think the crew are also very good, like Jack Sparrow's crew as well. Funny enough, Zoe Saldana makes a cameo in this movie as Anna Maria, the black female pirate that aids them, and she's the one that actually wants the interceptor. She apparently he borrowed a ship without permission, and Jack owes her a ship, and she gets to captain interceptor very briefly, a little role, and obviously when she slaps him across the face again, the slapping joke was just, I find it quite funny, and the Tortuga scenes always make me laugh, because it's basically like it's the shittest part of London as if it were back in the day. Like, it's just rough. Like, they're all pissed out of their minds. And yeah, also Gibbs is a good character. I like Gibbs as well. Overall, this is a great movie. It's not my favorite in the series, but it works because of its simplicity, its comedy, its characters, well, apart from Will and Elizabeth, the action. It's just a great epic ride. It is a bit long, but that's forgivable. It's not the longest of the series. We'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to score this a 9 out of 10. So we now move on to the second movie, Dead Man's Chest. Let's just say it's all a matter of leverage. So, Harry, what is your opinion of Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest?
Oh, God. Well, oddly enough, Ollie, I know this is your favorite in the series, and Jack, this is your least favorite. What a coincidence. So Jack, you're probably gonna agree with most of what I say, but Ollie, you're probably gonna hate me for this. But Dead Man's
where you live.
but Dead Man's Chest, it's just an okay summer blockbuster, but it's definitely, I think, one of the weaker films in the series as a whole. I mean,
how dare you?
The original. Sorry, Ollie.
No, it's all right.
I can understand if you love it. It definitely has great moments. Don't get me wrong.
I was just joking, Harry. Don't worry.
That's okay. Yeah, I will talk about the good first before I go to the bad. Don't you worry. Yeah.
Oh, there's good, is there?
Oh yeah, yes. Still plenty of good, and just the original Pirates of the Caribbean. It was just a simple, fun, heartfelt, swashbuckling adventure romp, and that's all these movies need to be, which is why it's my favorite. But this movie just really takes a step back from that by letting Gore Verbinski just go all out crazy and make the story more epic and longer, and subplots make it way more convoluted than it needs to be, and he just didn't need to do that. Gore Verbinski's direction was perfect in the original, but here it's kind of, it's good, but it is a little more flawed. He's trying to make this Pirates of the Caribbean basically meets Lord of the Rings, and it doesn't quite work. But
well, they did that by having Orlando Bloom in the movie.
Oh yeah, Legolas. Absolutely. Well, Well, I guess the good things are definitely what make me still come back to this movie and have time. Yeah, Johnny Depp's still consistently the best performance in this franchise. He's absolutely hilarious, especially in the opening when he's on Cannibal Island and being worshipped like this god. And then
I thought you were about to say Cannabis Island.
oh yeah, Cannabis Island.
It probably felt like that, actually. It felt like Jack Sparrow was on drugs.
Pretty much because of the way, because of the way he was acting. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and first he's being worshipped like a god, and then they try and cook him, and then of course obviously they have to escape. Yeah, that's actually a fun opening action scene. If only the entire movie could have been like that, then this could have turned out a better film. But I do think it's hilarious in the post-credit scene when the Cannibal Island people are worshipping the dog with the yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Will Elizabeth of course reprise their roles, and they are still the weakest part of the cast. I mean,
yeah.
But
I mean, what a wedding! I mean, it was destined that they weren't to be together. The wedding had to be interrupted.
oh yeah, that if they couldn't be married, that would be far too easy. Yeah, it had to be a rainy day, and they had to be interrupted by a freaking Norrington. Yeah,
it was actually the most depressing wedding ever. I mean, actually, also it was Beckett, not Norrington.
Oh yeah, Beckett. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. At least they'd have a happier future after that. But yeah, that is just a sad wedding, and although I do think that they, despite their characters still being boring as hell, they do things with them. Like Will actually meets his son, his father, Bill Strap, and it's actually
Bootstrap. Bootstrap Bill.
Bootstrap Bill, yeah. Yeah, it's actually a genuinely great father and son relationship. And yeah, just of course he was mentioned in the first film.
Jokestrap Jack.
Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah.
Resemblance between Bootstrap Bill and Will, but oh well. It's funny, they said in the first one, Harry, they said in the first one that he's a spitting image of him. Yeah.
Yeah, I call bullshit on that. He looks nothing like
We'll get
him.
to somebody spitting in the fifth film. Jack Sparrow!
Bullshit, Bill.
Oh yeah, and at least they did improve. Well, at least they did a good thing with Elizabeth slightly, where they made her actually fight in the climax. Because in the first movie,
made her a man.
Yeah, pretty much a man, where she was just the damsel in distress and cursed the Black Pearl. Here she does play a part in the action finale. And now let's move on to one of the best things about this movie, Bill Nye as Davy Jones. Oh, he's absolutely outstanding. Yeah, he's a really deep and complex character as well as a legitimately intimidating bad guy. And just
I agree.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, he's one of my favorite villains. And
I mean, if you think about it, sorry to interrupt you. If you think about it, he's more of a victim really than a villain. I mean, the bad things that he's done have come from his heartbreak. He's been a victim of a love that sort of turned him cruel. Like the everything that happened with Calypso has made him somewhat like a monster, literally and physically, and also emotionally. So I feel sorry for the guy for, because she betrayed him. She wasn't there for him. But obviously we find more about that in the third movie. But yeah, I agree with you about him. When he gets Bootstrap Bill to whip his own son. I mean, God.
Oh, that was shocking. Yeah, I was like when I saw that, wow, this guy's an asshole. But when you learn more about him, you do understand why Davy Jones is like that, as he has been heartbroken. So yeah, yeah, he is probably one of the most sympathetic villains in this series, as well as the cruelest. And I love his Flying Dutchman crew as well.
Use your death.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. They just look wonderfully created. Yeah, yeah. The Flying Dutchman is such a greatly designed ship, and the yeah, the Kraken is probably also a major highlight of this movie. Just I wish the Kraken was in the movie more. Yeah, because the third act is my favorite part of the movie by far. That's when all the fun action kicks in, and the fight on top of the big wheel between Jack, Will, and Norrington that is epic. That is so much fun, and I don't know how they pulled that off. And the battle of the Kraken obviously is just amazing, and the comedy in this film is a slight downgrade from the first film, but it still works in places for me. The "why is the rum always gone" joke is repeated here. It's still got a bit of a chuckle out of me, but it just wasn't as funny the first time. But probably the joke that made me laugh the most was, "I got a jar of dirt, and guess what's inside it?" Yeah. And, oh yeah, and but for all those good things, now let's get on to why this movie kind of doesn't live up to its full potential. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to get this out of the way. I don't like Beckett as a villain. I think he sucks as a villain. He is my least favorite villain in the series. He's just a generic bad guy who just wants to wipe out the pirates he has no motivation whatsoever. And and he has nothing. He has nothing to do in this movie. He doesn't get anything to do until at World's End. And Naomi Harris is good as Calypso. I will give her that. But here she is kind of wasted, as she wouldn't get a lot to do until at World's End either. Yeah, this movie kind of does
Her
feel
performance is really good, though. Would you say her performance is good?
Yeah, definitely. Her performance is pretty mesmerizing, and she's a fascinating character. And the the movie just feels like padding and filler for the next chapter, because this is obviously a two-part story, this and at World's End, and most of the payoff, of course, is saved for at World's End. Whether it delivered in at World's End, I will get to a bit later on in the hangout. But oh yeah.
Oh, I've seen your review, Harry. Or rant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the pacing in this movie is slightly overlong. The first film the first film had its length was absolutely fine. It's just 2 hours and 20 minutes. This is like 2.5 hours, and it really felt unnecessary making it that long, and just the amount going on. It's with all the subplots, it's kind of hard to tell what kind of movie this is really about. Is it about Davy Jones? Is it about Beckett? Is it about getting the chest? I really couldn't tell. And
well, it's about all those things. I think it's trying to be, at least. It's trying to be about everything, really.
Yeah, pretty much. It is trying to be everything, exactly. Yeah, it really did feel a little overblown for me. I really wish they would have stuck with the simpler, easier to follow plot of the first movie. And yeah, the pacing did kind of drag in the middle of this movie, especially. But it's better than the pacing, and it's better than the length of World's End, thank God. I can still sit through this movie easier than I can at World's End, that's for sure. However, I will say the Hans Zimmer soundtrack is amazing. Always love Hans Zimmer, no matter what he does.
I love this, the Kraken, the dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah, that is an epic moment, and I will say at least the movie does have a decent cliffhanger that will make you want to check out at World's End and want to see what happens next when Barbossa just returns from the dead at the very end. Yeah, I have to admit that.
Sent to the dead.
Oh yeah, yeah, I have to admit that was a pretty good twist, and yeah, and obviously the visual effects are absolutely spectacular. Yeah, this is a bigger budget movie than the first, and you can really tell. Though I do wish they had used a bit more practical effects like the first film to make it a bit more real. So Dead Man's Chest, it's a mixed bag of a film in my opinion. It is probably my second least favorite in the series, but it definitely has more redeeming qualities than at World's End. So for that I will give it a pass. So I am gonna give Dead Man's Chest a good 7 out of 10. Now, Jack and Ollie, take it away.
Well, I think it's Jack's turn now, and let's get the negative out of the way first before the positive.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Jack says, "Coming back, guys. Just give me a second." Yeah. On the subject of Dead Man's Chest, I kind of like that it ends on a cliffhanger. It was an interesting idea. Like the Jack Sparrow dies, and my auntie, who's a major Johnny Depp fan, when she first saw it, looked at the screen and went, "What? No! No! How could they kill him? No!" Oh, I'll never forget that reaction. And then, I mean, the good thing was, we only had to wait, less than a year at World's End. So,
well, yeah, at least they didn't keep us waiting too long. And yeah, absolutely, that was almost my reaction to that cliffhanger, pretty much. And I almost forgot to mention, while I do like that Elizabeth can stand up for herself in this film, she does do one horrible, unforgivable thing when she just leaves Jack on the Black Pearl to die at the hands of the Kraken after he came back to save them. What the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing even though I love this film, that's one thing I don't get. I know, obviously, that the Kraken was after Jack, so she wanted to save the others, but it's a bitch move. Like, what? Why?
Yeah. I'm like,
fuck.
Okay, so Jack, prepare to let rip on your least favorite Pirates movie. I will try not to clench my fists. Jokes.
Oh yeah, my favorite Pirates movie. Yeah, Dead Man's Chest. I know this is Ollie's favorite, so I won't try to be too harsh on this film.
No, it's all right, Jack. If you really don't like it, I respect your opinion. Express your opinion to agree.
To join in on it, yeah. No, I mean, Dead Man's Chest. I mean, I remember the build-up for this film. I remember, like I said, I didn't see the first one in the cinema, so I saw the first one on DVD, and I remember the build-up for this film, and it was about 3 years after the first one, and it was one of the longest 3 years of my life. I mean, it felt much longer than that. It felt like nearly 10 years for me as a kid. I remember when it came out, and I remember when I saw it in the cinema and really enjoyed it, but on reflection, it's not great. I mean, for me, my main problem with Dead Man's Chest is it just feels like filler. I mean, the whole movie to me just feels like set up for the third film, and that's my main issue. I mean, I will admit, I think the opening is quite good, the wedding, and
the very grim wedding.
yeah, and I think Beckett, Tom Hollander as a Beckett. I know Harry doesn't really like him. Says he's the weakest villain of the series.
Oh yeah,
Spider-Man. Just so people know, we're not talking about that one.
Yeah, that's Tom Holland. Yeah.
When I heard about Tom Holland being cast as Spider-Man, I thought, What, the guy from Pirates of the Caribbean is Spider-Man? What the fuck? Oh, Tom Hollander. Right, that's it. Sorry, Jack.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I mean, Beckett for me though, I think he's one of the best villains. I mean, Beckett is he's really sinister. I mean, he doesn't get as much to do in this film as in the next film, but for the scenes he's in this film, he's pretty damn good. And I think Tom Hollander really brings a sort of sinister, quiet kind of menace to Beckett. I mean, he never really raises his voice, and that's what's kind of scary about him, is that, you know, I mean, you could tell he's clearly a disturbed man. You know, he's basically there's something going on with him. That's what I like about Beckett as a villain. He's just sort of this quiet, sort of evil, manipulative guy. And I think Beckett,
him and Elizabeth, when she comes to collect the letters of Mark from him, and he's like, "I'll still want that compass."
Yeah,
consider that in your relations.
I mean, yeah, I mean he's good though, and one of the highlights of the film. I mean, my main problem with Dead Man's Chest is it just feels like it's trying to copy the first film too much. I mean, recently rewatching it, it just copies a lot of the scenes in the first film, like the "Where's the rum gone" joke and going to Tortuga and being slapped, and instead of Will saving Elizabeth, it's Elizabeth trying to save Will this time. I mean, I just think it's a very sort of middle, average, mediocre film. I mean, you know, I mean, I just think that, you know, the storytelling here is just a lot more lazy. It's like after the first film, they're like, hey, everybody loved the first film, so let's just copy it. Let's just, you know, I mean, it's not a complete rip-off, but there just are a lot of similar scenes that they just copied from the first film. I mean, I think the problem is as well is I think it's too long. I mean, it's longer than the first film, and I don't think it needed to be. I think it could have been, you know, it could have been shorter or at the same length of the first film. You didn't need to make this longer. I mean, I just think the whole plot of finding Davy Jones's heart, it's like, you know, who really cares, to be honest? You know,
if I only had a heart. The Tin Man from Wizard of Oz who's looking for his heart. It's like Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. We're off to see the Wizard.
No.
We're off to see Davy Jones. Yeah. Davy Jones is the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. I know, but I mean, I think the film I think Gore Verbinski just kind of dropped the ball. He was like, fuck it. You know, everybody loved the first film. Let's just kind of copy it. And there's just a lot of scenes that are sort of similar. I mean, I think Johnny Depp here is good, although I think he's good, although, you know, I don't think the humor here is as strong in the first film. I mean, there are good things, don't get me wrong. It's not atrocious. Like, it's not like a 0 out of 10 or anything like that. I mean, far from it. I mean, it has its enjoyable moments. I will say the action is, for the most part, still pretty fun. I enjoy the action. Although I just think some of the characters here just aren't as good. Like, I think Elizabeth really, she's just a bitch in this film. I mean, particularly at the end when, you know, she basically, like, you know, Jack basically leaves the ship and she's like, oh, you're a coward. And then he comes back and he saves the ship and she just kisses him and, like, gives him up to the Kraken. And I remember as a kid, I was just like, I was just thinking to myself, you bitch. I mean, I didn't know.
Also, Jack, do you remember the scene earlier before they go on the island and Curiosity? Now that scene, she was like leading him on. I mean, and she wanted to like, and she was like, oh, I want to be married now. And then, you know, like, what? Like, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think her portrayal is just really confused in this film, and I just think Elizabeth just comes across as a real bitch. I mean, one thing I will say though, I mean, the introduction of Davy Jones is good. I mean, Davy Jones, I mean, I like Davy Jones. I don't think he's as great as everybody says he is. I don't think he's the best Pirates of the Caribbean villain, but he definitely is good. I mean, I think Barbossa is still the best, but I think Davy Jones is still good. I mean, Bill Nye gives a good performance, like, you know, sort of Scottish accent, like, you know, hello, Mr. Turner, like, you know, I can't really.
Your death.
Your death. Yeah, or something. Yeah, I mean,
when he first walks onto the deck of the Dutchman and then to the guy who's like shaking right in front of him, he's blowing his cigar, like his pipe. But that was really creepy.
I was like, you fear death. Like, that was good, yeah. I mean, I think the CGI here is pretty good. I mean, the one thing I will say about this film, and we get it more in the sequels, I just think the crew is just like, oh, so we had the undead people in the first film, now we have to have an underwater sort of crew. I mean, it's not too bad, but as the film series goes on, it's like, why can't we just have a regular crew instead of like an undead or zombie crew or whatever, which we'll get to later. No, but I mean, I think, Bill Nighy gives a good performance. Like David Jones he is sinister, and I will say that stuff is good. I mean, I think it isn't too bad. I mean, I like the relationship between him and Bootstrap Bill, although I agree with Ollie. I mean, he looks nothing like Bootstrap Bill. I mean, Orlando Bloom's like a hunky guy, and like the guy plays Bootstrap Bill. Like, no offense to him, but what the hell did he give birth to? What helped give birth to this guy? I mean, I know his wife gave birth, but it's like, ugh. I mean, I don't get it.
And also, how does Bootstrap know Jack? Because also, like, there's a scene in the beginning when he warns him about Davy Jones, and then he's very sinister. You think, oh, this guy might be a villain, but then we realise he's actually a good guy, and he's Will's dad. And then, like, obviously for Jack to hide away on the Cannibal Island, but it was like, why was he trying to be all villainous about it? Why couldn't he have just been like, Jack, after you gotta quickly.
Yeah. I mean,
as much as I love the film, that was one thing that confused me. I'll give it that.
I mean, I think the stuff is, I forgot to mention the stuff as well on the Cannibal Island. I mean, it's funny, but I just think it goes on too long. It's like 45 minutes of the film. It's like you could have trimmed that down. I mean, it is funny, like, they're worshipping him as a god, and like, he's running away and like sort of like a fruit kebab or whatever it is, like on a skewer sort of thing, and like when they're in the giant ball and they're like down. I mean, I think it's entertaining, but I think you could have cut down some of the stuff in Cannibal Island. I mean, I think the production design is good. I agree with Harry here. I mean, I think they just introduced too many subplots in this film. I mean, this is where they start to introduce too many subplots in the series. I mean, I can follow it. It's fine, but it's like, do we really need this much stuff going on? I mean, I think the comedy is still pretty good here, even though they recycle some of the jokes, like where's the rum gone? There is one funny line where he says, when Elizabeth arrives, he's like, "Oh, Elizabeth, hide the rum." Like, that's funny. But I mean, I just think, I think they recycled too many elements from the first film. I mean, you didn't need Will and Elizabeth back for this film. Let's be honest. I mean, their story was done in the first film. They got together. That was it. We didn't really need them back for this film, if you think about it. And
I mean, the only thing that really connects Will and Elizabeth to is his dad, but Elizabeth has no connection to the story, other than obviously like her father gets kidnapped by Beckett. But for Elizabeth herself, there's no reason for her to be there.
Yeah, no. The thing that connects them is the paycheck that they both got for this film.
Oh,
yeah. No, I mean, bringing back Norrington. I mean, I also think going back to Tortuga and bringing back Norrington was a bit unnecessary. It's like, okay, we get it. We know what happened in the first film. Do we need him back as well? I mean, it's nice to have the actor from the first film return to play Norrington, but it was kind of like, why do we need this stuff again? And I just think, there are a lot of jokes here that Gore Verbinski and the writers like Ted Elliott and Terry Russo just sort of recycled, like the rum joke and the slap joke. And I just think it gets a bit unnecessary. And the stuff with Elizabeth, I just don't care for. Like, I mean, there are some funny scenes, like when they think that, when she's controlling the dress and they think the dress is a ghost and it's like Tortuga. That's good. But I mean, I think the film, it just drags for me. I mean, the stuff with the black spot, I'll admit, it isn't bad. And Davy Jones, Bill Nighy's good. But I just think for me, the main problem with it just feels like setup for the second film. It's like, oh, we got to get the heart of Davy Jones, and that's really it. I mean, it's just point A to point A, really. It's just going to get the heart, and that's it. It feels uneventful for me. I mean, I just feel like they could have done more. And I mean, I will say, the ending is good when they're on the on the island and they're having a fight. I mean, the fight is good. I'll say that, and there's some funny humor. And that guy, the shell face guy or whatever, when his head gets kicked off, and he's like, "Oh, over here!" Like, you know, I got a laugh out of me. But I think Bill Nighy's good, but I just think he's sort of like. I just think some of the characters here are wasted. Like, I think Jonathan Pryce doesn't really get anything to do here. After the first film, he doesn't get much to do really, and I think Beckett could have been used more. He's just kind of there. Like, he basically gets Will to find Jack's compass, so we can find Davy Jones's heart, and on that scene where Elizabeth encounters Beckett, that's good. But for me, the film just feels like. It kind of feels like a fair ride in a way. It just kind of feels like a fair ride that just keeps going on and on and on. I just feel like there are just moments in the film that that drag. I just think like the scenes with Elizabeth drag, and some of the stuff with Jack kind of drags, and I just think, the whole plot with the heart of Davy Jones. We do get some stuff about Calypso, which is good. We're introduced to Naomi Harris's Calypso briefly in this film, and she's good. Naomi Harris, is before she did Bond, and she's kind of unrecognizable compared to Bond, but here she's really good, and her Jamaican accent's great. Apparently her mother, trained her in the Jamaican accent because her mother's from Jamaica.
Because they have certain words that they say a bit differently, don't they? Like with a bit more of a emphasis on their words. And it's a shame she's only in 2 scenes in this movie, but thankfully in the third film she gets much more to do.
Yeah, that's my main problem as well. Like I said, it's just kind of the characters I feel are wasted. Like Beckett doesn't get much to do. Davy Jones, he gets some stuff to do, but not a lot. The positives, I will say, like some of the humor is still good. Some of the action is good, especially the finale. I liked the Kraken. I will say the Kraken is cool, like the way it's this giant sort of octopus squid thing, and it destroys ships, and that's really cool. I like that. I think the Kraken is great. And that's one of the main highlights of the film. I think the action towards the end, like the jar of dirt scene, that's funny. When it turns out there's nothing in the heart, and Norrington delivered the heart, that's good. But I think one of my issues with this film as well is there's no Barbossa. There is at the end, but I kind of feel like without Jeffrey Rush, it just doesn't feel like a Pirates of the Caribbean film as much for me. I feel like I know they killed the character off, but it would have been nice if we had him, more than just one scene at the end.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack. Obviously, with all due respect, were you really expecting him to be in it, though? Because, as you said, he died at the end of the film. I don't think anybody was expecting.
No, I didn't expect him in it, but I'm just saying, for me, the reason why is my favorite as well is just because he's not in it. I just think, it would have benefited if he was in it a bit more than just one scene at the end. Like, maybe it would be interesting if he appeared maybe halfway through the film and something like that. But it's not a huge deal because he will appear in the next 3 films, which is good. But I kind of feel like his presence here is it's sorely missed. Overall, I don't think the film is bad. The finale is good.
Great. What do you think of the score by Hans Zimmer?
Yeah, I think the score is good. I think you could definitely tell he borrowed a lot of soundtracks from the guy who did the first film. You still got the great, Pirates of the Caribbean thing, and you got and all the other stuff. I think that some of the dialogue here is a bit ropey. But I like Peter R. McNally as well as Mr. Gibbs. I think Mr. Gibbs is great as well. He's in all of the films. But I mean, the ending is interesting, where Norrington basically gives Beckett the heart, and Jack is sacrificed to the Kraken. And I mean, Elizabeth, she's just a complete. I mean, she's a bitch. I mean, she's
Also,
just,
why does Will not confront her? He just says, "Oh, if there's anything that could be done to bring her back." Surely Will would be more pissed at her, and he'd be like, I mean, he only confronts her at World's End.
I mean,
And he
yeah,
doesn't
I mean,
even,
I don't
like-
understand that either. I mean, she gets on the boat and he doesn't even ask where Jack is. They just sail off. It's like,
Well, no, actually, no, Jack is, but he doesn't say, "Oh, why did you just kiss him? What was all that about?" He just like bobs it off. It's like, oh yeah, whatever.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think Elizabeth here, it's probably her weakest performance, just because she is such a bitch. It's like, Jack leaves, she thinks he's a coward because he leaves, but then he comes back and he saves the ship, and she does that to him. And then she's like, and then when I mean, the line that really annoyed me was she's like, "I'm not sorry." It's like,
Not sorry.
I'm not sorry. It's like, if I was Jack, I would have been like savvy, like, or something like that.
She
Like-
didn't even have to leave him there. He could have just escaped the Perla with the rest of them before the Kraken came back.
He should have just held her with him because, she could have got.
He could have just sealed the land and stayed on land, and the Kraken wouldn't have come for them. But instead, no, she had to sacrifice him to the Kraken. Although I will say, I think the ending's cool, like where he gets his sword out and he puts,
Hello, big
yeah, and he puts his sword into the Kraken. That's cool. But yeah, I mean, that's Dead Man's Chest, and to be honest, I mean, I don't hate the film. I mean, the first time I saw it in the cinema, I really liked it, but just on reflection now, it's a bit of a it's a disappointment of a sequel for me. I mean, I know Ollie is going to strongly disagree because this is his favorite of the series, and that's fair enough. I mean, opinions are opinions, and
Oh, you want to fight?
no, just each to their own. But,
Yeah, I was just joking.
no, I mean, just for me, I just think after the first one, it's just kind of like, I just think it's a timekeeper. I mean, I know a lot of people said, "Oh, the next film in the series at World's End," but for me, it just feels like, oh, because they filmed this back to back, it just feels like set up for the third film. I mean, for me, you can easily just skip over this film. Like, all you need to know really is that they find the heart of Davy Jones and Jack was sacrificed to the Kraken. That was it. I mean,
that's like the main plot thread is that they're going after the heart of Davy Jones to stop him and Beckett from taking over the seas. And obviously, there's other little things that go on. But that's like the basic strand of the plot. But yeah, I can see what you mean. I understand. I respect your opinion.
I mean, I don't hate it though. I mean, I don't think it's atrocious or anything. It's not like a god awful sequel, but for me, it's just kind of like meh. I mean, I could take it or leave it. Really. I mean, out of the series, I'd probably say yeah, it is the weakest for me. And I know Harry think the next one is, and I know a lot of people say at World's End is the weakest, but for me, Dead Man's Chest is the weakest, just because it just feels like a time waster. It's just like, we have to go find the heart of Davy Jones, and it just feels like suspense for the third film. It just kind of feels like, we're building it up for the third film, and that's kind of the reason why I rated this low. It just feels like, for me, it kind of drags on, and it just copies too many scenes of the original. Like, they bring back too many characters. The plot.
The whipping scene was intense.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I actually think that's probably one of the best scenes of the film, like where Bootstrap is sort of conflicted and he has to whip Will, and and that game of liar's dice is good, where he basically says, "I'll serve you forever," at least like call me a liar, and then he checks the dice. I mean, I think all the stuff with Will and his father Bootstrap is good. I'll give it that, and the whip scene is probably one of the most intense and one of the best scenes of the film. But apart from the few positives I have in it, like the production design, some of the action, I just feel that it tries to copy too much of the original. It just feels like a timekeeper, like, let's just get bums on seats for 2.5 hours and get their money. I mean, that's what it feels like for me anyway. And it just kind of feels like the story is still in progression, and that it just doesn't. For me, it just doesn't go anywhere. It's just like, they find the heart of Davy Jones, and that's it. Like, and I just think some of the characters like Beckett and and a lot are wasted. I mean, although I do like the end scene where Barbosa comes down and he like bites into the apple. That's good. But yeah, I mean that's Dead Man's Chest. I mean, if I had to rate this one, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. I mean, solid, passable, but just not. Yeah, my least favorite of the series, but not terrible. Just it's solid.
Each to their own. I'm very sorry to have to strongly disagree with both of you. You fear death. Yes, Dead Man's Chest. For as long as I can remember, I've always loved this film. And, shoot me if I'm wrong, kill me, whatever you have to do, string me up, But for me, this is my personal favorite of the franchise. And there are a few other as their favorite as well. I know this one is obviously essentially half of the film. It is argued strongly as a sort of a timekeeper, and that it's basically just, a build-up, which I don't mind, actually. I mean, the thing that I like about this one more than the first one is the story. I know you guys don't particularly see it, but for me, I've always found the story much more engaging, much more interesting. The idea of Davy Jones and his sort of backstory, obviously the fact that there's so much mystery surrounding the plot and that we don't know everything until the next one, I actually thought it was really effective. And I was really intrigued by the whole concept of Davy Jones and his emotional storyline, and the scene in Calypso's shack, when, if you can call it that, yeah, shack, when she tells them obviously about the woman who he fell in love with, which is of course her. And there are elements of filler. I don't deny that. The Cannibal Island stuff is funny and it's very entertaining, but it does go on a bit too long. I will agree with that. But after that, for me, it really gets going, and I really find it intriguing. Like when Will has to go aboard the Dutch Mother, there's some great emotional drama there. There's just more emotion in this one, I think. There's more of an emotional core to this story. There's more of a, pardon the pun, more of a beating heart to this one. Sorry. And, I think it's a darker story, and I've always found it more engaging, and it's bigger in scale. It's more epic, and, the script, I think, is very good. There are a lot of things going on in this movie, but I like that. I like that we've kind of expanded from the simplicity of the first one, and we've gone for a bigger story. Jack Sparrow is obviously he's having a bit of a breakdown, I guess you could say, at the very beginning, after receiving the warning from Bootstrap Bill that Davy Jones is after him, and then he kind of goes a bit mental and he hides away on the Cannibal Island. Johnny Depp's great, and he's very funny in this one, and I really like him. And the fact that he's actually kind of a dick as well in this film, because he leads Will to basically cover his own arse, and then he lies to Elizabeth about the compass and Will and everything else, and he's obviously disgraced Norrington, so he's kind of caused problems for everybody to basically cover his own arse. So, but despite that, he's still very likable, and I really like him. I think he's hilarious in this film. And of course, you have Will and Elizabeth returning. Maybe they didn't need to return. Yeah, they weren't really necessary, but I thought they were okay in this movie. It was nice that the film opened with their wedding. Well, what was going to be their wedding until they were interrupted. I like that the film opens in a very intriguing mood. It doesn't feel like, it's not ceremonious. It just feels very bleak and very grim. So immediately you get the sense of tension, like, oh, okay, something's about to happen. And then the East India Trading Company come in, and you're like, oh, somebody's invading Port Royal. This is right. Sorry, 1 second, guys.
He's been abducted by Barbosa.
Sorry about that. I was interrupted.
Barbosa come to the door?
No. Okay. Where was I? yeah, and I just think this is it's bigger and it's better, and I love the action of this movie. The Cannibal Island stuff is funny, and all of the Kraken scenes are awesome. I mean, I love the Kraken. It's yeah, they probably nicked it from Greek mythology, but who the fuck cares? Because it's a huge monster and it's so epic in scale. And the climax on the boat on the Black Pearl is awesome when they have and the first Kraken scene as well was great when they goes on that other ship. And I love the shot when one of the crew members is holding up the dress. Ongoing joke about the dress being like some kind of omen. I thought that was very funny. I mean, I like the fact that this movie ends on a cliffhanger. I think it's really effective. That we still don't know everything by the end, and you know we get a surprising twist of surprising fate of Jack's death, which I didn't expect. I mean, Elizabeth isn't great here. She's a bit of a bitch, to be honest. But that's not Keira Knightley's fault. It's just the writing. But Keira Knightley's performance could have been stronger. She basically just, you know, half-asses her way through it, as if she doesn't really care. I mean, one of the most cringiest lines that she delivers in this is the one for these bars I'd have you already. Oh, God. What a squishy line. Oh, God.
This is a Attack of the Clones dialogue right here.
Yeah. And I think visually, I mean, you guys haven't really mentioned this yet, but visually, this is stunning. I mean, Davy Jones, he's a work of art. Look at him. He's just amazing. The motion capture on Bill Nighy as well.
The fucking fried calamari.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Nighy gives a superb performance. But I think the visuals are amazing. Like the way the tentacles just float around and stuff are so good. I mean, Davy Jones, I will say this, he's probably better in the next movie, but he's still great here because there's a lot of mystery surrounding him. I mean, he doesn't do much in terms of action here, but he's an intriguing presence in this movie, and I like that. He's kind of in control in this movie, where in the third one, he's not really in control. So there's a different thing. Because we get to know more about him as well. But in this movie, he's great. He's just a complete bastard. I love the dice game scene. That is really good. Bootstrap Bill basically saves Will from an eternity of servitude. I like is also when Will is trying to grab the key and he's trying to move the tentacles out the way to get to the key, which is really cool. Yeah, I think the pacing is great. I completely disagree. I'm sorry, guys, but I actually thought this one flew by, even more so than the first. And yes, Cutler Beckett could have been better. But you know, he was all right in this movie. He's not my favorite villain, far from my favorite villain, but I don't think he's the worst villain. I wouldn't go that far. He's quite sinister, but he just doesn't do much in this movie. And he's an intriguing presence in the next one, but he's kind of wasted in this movie. But that's a minor gripe. I like the return of Norrington as well. Norrington is a nice presence here. You know, it's interesting to see his fall from grace, how he's kind of been disgraced because of what happened in the first film, and how he gets his redemption from bringing the heart of Davy Jones to, and also the big action scene on the island where they fight. There's the three-way sword fight, and they fight on the massive wheel. I just think that's so funny, and how Elizabeth is trying to stop them fighting, and she's like, "Oh, the heat!" She's like fainting. So I thought was the Hans Zimmer score is fantastic, especially the Kraken thing. It's so intense and epic, and these are the moments that I really love of this film. And also, like when we're on The Flying Dutchman, seeing Davy Jones for the first time, his introduction is cool when he sort of just comes down and he's sort of smoking the pipe and he's like, "Do you fear death?" You know, and that's really creepy and sinister. This movie is dark and scary. There's some scary stuff in this movie. I think it's probably the scariest of the five movies that we've got so far.
Definitely.
There's a great scene with Jack and Davy Jones when he's like, "You have a debt to pay," and you know, he And then Jack is sort of reminding him, like, by saying, "Oh, you know, have you met Will Turner? He's in love with a girl," and that sort of strikes a nerve for Davy Jones, which I think is cool. Like, he's a very complex villain. He's a very sympathetic villain, as Harry says. He's quite a tragic villain, but I like that about him, and that makes him very different from Barbossa. Barbossa's just pure evil. He was just pure evil because he was. Davy Jones' evil actions came from his heartbreak, and as you guys have said, the whipping scene is just intense. I never appreciated it fully until I rewatched the film recently, but also the music in that scene is really evil, like just intense. Like the fact that he got 5 lashes from his father. Oh, that was horrible. Like, the comedy's good here, especially like Jack said, the hide the rum joke scene in Tortuga when Norrington starts a fight, and then Jack and Gibbs are trying to get out, and then they're moving up the stairs, and Jack just tries on all the hats. That was just funny. And then they stop before the balcony goes out of the way, and he's like, "Carry on." That was cool. That was very funny. And I really like this movie. I think it's epic. It's intense. I mean, yeah, Jonathan Pryce could have done a bit more, but I think it's a very funny movie. It's very charming. It has a lot of dark moments to it. It's more complex. There's a lot of mystery surrounding it. I think it's epic. It's for me, it's the best. It's just the best. And I love the story, and I love the. I just love it, basically. So I'm going to give it an easy 10 out of 10. Of course, the story is not concluded by the end of this movie. Oh, I forgot to mention Naomi Harris is also very good as Calypso, or Tia Dalma, as her other name is. And her Jamaican accent is excellent. It really is. So, Harry, this is going to be an interesting one for you. Let's move on to At World's End.
Oh man. At World's End. It's just, this is, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything here. I know you and Jack really like this movie. Jack certainly thinks it's an improvement over Dead Man's Chest, but I am I'm gonna be the only one to say this. You and Jack are really you're gonna beyond disagree with me and really gonna get angry in my little rant. But I'm sorry, I don't like this movie. I think it's thoroughly mediocre, a beyond disappointing movie. It's by far, I think, the worst in the series.
You know what,
but
Harry?
don't get me.
I'm not going to get angry. I'm going to say, fair enough, but I'm going to clench my fists. I'm going to say, fuck you! I'll let you
Oh, thanks. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Opinions are opinions, and it's just the problem with this movie is just its film is far too long. This is the longest and most unnecessarily dark and by far the most boring Pirates of the Caribbean movie. This is one of the longest movies I have ever seen in my life. It's just why is this film a 3-hour runtime? That is totally pointless. Gore Verbinski, that is just pushing it. Come on. I mean, at least.
I guess you could say the same of Lord of the Rings.
Well, yeah. At least it's exactly trying to be like Lord of the Rings, but nowhere near on that level. At least Lord of the Rings had a reason and deserved to be 3 hours long because there's so much shit goes down in them. But here, but here so little happens that the movie does not deserve this.
Would you use the phrase with Gore Verbinski in this film? Would you use the phrase "the captain goes down with his ship"?
Oh yeah, he goes way down with his ship. His ship just sinks.
Actually, I'll rephrase: the captain goes down with the shit.
Absolutely, we're down with the shit. But don't get me wrong, I do still have little praises from this movie. I don't completely hate it. So I mean, at least Johnny Depp is still, bless him, gives a great performance, even if this is
Oh,
my
wait, you mean all 40 of him?
Oh yeah, the multiple Jacks in Davy Jones' locker. I didn't know what the fuck was going on in that scene at first until Ollie thankfully explained to me that was his hallucination. So thanks, yeah. But
You're welcome.
oh yeah, but it's just this is his weakest performance for me because he's not because he gets the least screen time in this film. There's sadly so little Jack Sparrow, and he's what we see this franchise for, really. And although back to the good things, the visual effects are stunning. Yeah, it does look great, and the characters that didn't were barely focused on in the second movie at least get a bigger role here. Like Naomi Harris is definitely better as Calypso this time. She is more prominent in the story, and we learn who she is, and her backstory with Davy Jones is pretty heart wrenching, and just and also the and I'm not gonna lie, the final battle with the Pearl and Dutchman in the Malaststorm, it is awesome. It is a pretty epic. It's what we've been waiting for. It's what the movie built up to, but it took so freaking damn long to get to that I'm like, why couldn't the rest of the movie be like this? I'm like, so that leads me to my negatives. Oh, I have a lot of negatives. The opening is terrible. Why did they hang those kids in the opening? I'm like, Gore Verbinski. Yeah, Gore Verbinski, are you fucking messed up in the head? Where's the fun in that? What kid would want to see that going into a Pirates movie?
His kids, I guess.
Well, I guess so. Yeah. Judge. Yeah, and the movie even takes 45 fucking minutes to even introduce Captain Jack Sparrow. It takes that long to get going, and it really felt that way. Yeah, the beginning of this movie, I was beginning to just nod off and just was not interested. Yeah, they spend way too much time in Singapore and actually getting to Davy Jones' locker, whereas that should have been just very start of the movie. I'm sorry, and even though Barbossa does return in this film, yeah, Jeffrey Rush is pretty solid, but they don't do anything special with him. He's just a good guy, just along for the ride. I think he gets a much more interesting, storyline in On Stranger Tides, and the way they handled Davy Jones was such a letdown for me. He's no longer the badass and intimidating villain. He's still a very sympathetic and deep. I'll give him that. But the fact that he's no longer really in control. The main villain, that Beckett was. That was the biggest mistake in this movie. Beckett is still. He's such a terrible villain. He cannot. He can, yeah. He cannot carry this movie like Davy Jones can. And Beckett does jack shit. He just stands around and doesn't even do anything really. I was never intimidated.
Has become immaterial.
Can I ask Harry, why do you dislike Beckett so much? Like, what is it to you that you don't like about him? Just out of curiosity.
There's clenching his fists.
Oh yeah. Well, I know you like him, Jack. It's just he just doesn't have any motivation for me. He's just so boring, one dimensional, and he had so little to do in Dead Man's Chest. You might as well have cut him out. And even in Villain here, it just doesn't work for me. And also his defeat was pretty anticlimactic for me. I was, so in the end, just don't like him. And
Oh,
also,
shame.
yes, I know. And the Chinese guy talk about a waste of what could have been a potentially good character.
Yeah.
He
Why?
Oh yeah, Jonier fan. Yeah. Why did the trailers, posters, and TV spots really hype him up to be in the movie? As he does absolute jack shit. He only gets 2 scenes and then gets killed off. What a waste. And yeah, and but just of course, like I said, the biggest problem with this movie, it's far too dark. Is that there's all the fun of the first movie, and some of the fun from the second has been sucked out. This was still dark, but it's pretty light-hearted in comparison to this film. Yeah, I barely laughed at all, and the way they just repeated the "Why is the rum always gone" joke for the 3rd fucking time, I at that point didn't even give a chuckle. And but the Brethren court scene was the worst part of this movie. My God, the pacing in that scene was so fucking god awful. That there was. I mean, that was just a bunch of exposition of people sitting around talking, telling us there's a big war with Beckett, and it's time for the pirate lords.
We shall go to war.
Oh yeah, there are pirates of all nationalities there, definitely. But they keep telling us that there's a big war and all the pirates have to unite, but you never feel the stakes because there's so little action in this movie. There's just no tension to be found in this film, and I didn't give a fuck what was going on, and just like I said, I cannot watch At World's End without being bored out of my fucking mind, without just needing a coffee break every once in a while, and when that 3 hours is over, I just leap up and cheer. Thank God. But I mean, at least those minor good things are still enough from preventing me from considering this a terrible movie, because it's not. Still could have been worse, I guess. At least those some good things still make me come back to see it sometimes. But this is definitely the one I put on the least, just because of its ridiculously and stupidly overlong runtime and some of the worst pacing I've seen in. So I'm afraid I know. Yeah, you and Jack are may strongly disagree, and is by far my least favorite of the 5 movies. So I'm gonna have to rate At World's End a 4 out of 10. So Jack, mate, will you do the honors?
Yeah, fuck you. Only joking.
Or is he?
Joking. No, At World's End. I mean, I know this isn't everybody's.
Never really going to be the end, was it?
Not really.
Well, I mean, I know this isn't everybody's favorite Pirates of the Caribbean film, but At World's End, what?
You can say that again.
Yeah, but At World's End, I really like it. I don't care what people say. I mean, for me, At World's End, it's just, I think it's a big improvement over the second film. I mean, first of all, I think the pacing for this film, while it isn't like the best, I don't think it's god awful. I mean, I could sit through all of it. I wasn't, as bored as Harry was. I mean, I could understand if he thinks it's too long, and maybe it is 10 minutes too long, 10 or 20 minutes too long. But for me, the pacing of this film, it's all right. I mean, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. But yeah, I mean, I could sit through it. I mean, I could still sit through it and enjoy it. I mean, for me, why I prefer this to Dead Man's Chest is because there's a lot more going on here. I mean, I actually really like that opening in Singapore. I think that opening scene is awesome. I mean, we've never seen the pirates in Singapore before, and when they chuck the swords up to them, that's great. And
the hanging scene's a bit dark though.
Yeah, the hanging scene is dark, but I mean, it's only one scene in the film, and you don't actually see the kid get hanged. You see the guy pull the lever, but you don't actually see the kid, hanging. which is good. I mean, I think, you know, the locations here are great. I mean, for me, you know, watching this at the time, I really loved it. I mean, I think the scale of the movie is just great. I mean, there's all these different locations that they go to in the film, and I really like all the different locations within the film. I mean, the scene after the credits in Singapore is great. Chow Yun-fat, I think, is great as the pirate, one of the pirate lords. Although I will agree with Harry, he's kind of wasted. He's only in a few scenes before he dies. But
his name is So Feng, by the way.
What?
His name is So Feng, by the way.
Yeah, and I was just saying Chow Yun-fat, the actor who played him. Yeah. No, but I mean, I think he's good, even though he doesn't get many scenes. You know, the stuff in Singapore I think's cool. The fight scene's cool. When they put up the swords. The stuff with Jack and Davy Jones's locker. I mean, I know some people have a problem with that. They said, you know, the pacing could have been better, but I think the pacing's okay, to be honest. And I like the build up that they have to find Jack and they have to go basically to the ends of the earth, as Calypso says. My homie Harris's character. I mean, you know, I think that stuff's cool. And like, you know, when they're going through the Arctic, and you know, you got Johnny Depp as all these different versions of Jack. I mean, and I think Johnny Depp here actually gives a really good performance. I think this is actually one of his best performances. I mean, he was good in the first one. He was still good in the second one, but I think here he's better just because he's playing all these different versions of Jack. And when you see that rock and they become these crabs and stuff, I mean, it is a bit weird, but I mean, I think the scenes of Davy Jones' locker is interesting. And when they arrive in Davy Jones's locker, and I just think what I really like about this film is that really, you know, I just think the cast here, you know, the cast that they got for this film is great. I mean, they got Jeffrey Rush back as Barbossa. You've got Tom Hollander as Beckett. You got Davy Jones, Bill Nye's Davy Jones in this film, Chow Yun-fat. You know, I mean, you've got an excellent cast here, and I think, you know, I mean, I disagree with Harry. I think there is a lot of humor in here. I think Ollie said it in his review, and I agree. I think it's actually one of the more humorous films in the series. I mean, that stuff with Barbossa and Jack where they're arguing on deck, that's hilarious. Where they're like, you know, hoist this mean seal and all this, and I mean, yeah, there is that one scene where, like, you know, Will finds out that Elizabeth sacrificed Jack, but you know, it doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, I think this film, in terms of action, I disagree with Harry as well. I think there's actually more action here than there is in the second film. I mean, particularly that end fight on the ships. You know, that's quite a big action scene and one of my favorite, not just in the film but maybe in the whole series. I mean, I think as well that I mean, the plot is interesting. Like, they have to assemble all these pieces of 8, and they have to
the 9 pieces of 8.
Yeah, 9 pieces of 8. Yeah, which is amusing. And they have to release Calypso to stop Davy Jones. I just think, for me, why I prefer this to Dead Man's Chest is it just feels like there's a lot more going on here than Dead Man's Chest. Dead Man's Chest was just kind of like, oh, we have to find Davy Jones' heart, and that was really it. I mean, I think the characters here as well go more on of an emotional journey. I mean, Jack gets more to do here. I actually think Elizabeth here isn't too bad. Like, the scene where she becomes a pirate lord, I mean, it is a bit like, well, it's a bit ridiculous, but I mean, I don't mind it. It's not like I'm not cringing at it or anything. I mean, I think it's kind of amusing. Yeah. I mean, the scene as well where they have to turn the boat upside down. I think that's really good. That's quite funny.
Scene is awesome.
Yeah, the music in that is awesome. And when the two pirates, the guy with the wooden eyeballs, that they tie themselves to the ship and then it goes upside down, and they're still upside down. It's like, this is your fault. And I know it's quite funny, like when when Barbossa and Jack are arguing, and he just says, "Stop it!" Or whatever. Like, I just kind of I was laughing. Like, I mean, I have to disagree with Harry. I think the humor here is actually there is a lot of humor. But the main focus is more on the drama, I guess. I think the characters here are used a lot better as well. I think Beckett gets a lot more to do here, which is great. Tom Hollander really shows off his acting capability as Beckett, and Davy Jones is great here as well. Like, you see, basically Beckett has control over him, and you have that scene where it's like, I can't be summoned here like some mongrel pup, like
Great line.
Yeah, and I think I think the characters just. I just think for me the film, it just feels more like a sort of conclusion to the series. At the time when I saw this, I thought it was the last film. It was called At World's End, and it kind of wrapped up the stories from the first two, so it did feel like an ending. And I remember actually going to see this film with my cousin and her family, and we actually had a Chinese afterwards. We had a Chinese dinner.
Because of Chow Yun.
Yeah, no, we just had a Chinese, but no, but I just remember loving it. At the time, actually, when I first saw it, it was actually my favorite of the series. It was my favorite Pirates of the Caribbean film, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I can understand people's criticisms that, yeah, maybe it is a bit too long, but for me, it's kind of like, if you compare them to like the Man with No Name trilogy, you've got Fistful of Dollars, which is the shortest, then you got A Few Dollars More, which is longer, than Good, the Bad, the Ugly, which is the longest. It kind of feels like that. And I think Gore Verbinski, if you watch those films of Clint Eastwood, the Spaghetti trilogy, you can tell he got a lot of influence from those films. And in fact, he made that film Rango in 2011, which was a homage to those films.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I think there are some, there are some other good stuff. Like, when you find out the Kraken's dead, it's a shame, but it's interesting you find the corpse of the Crapsin. Sorry, the Crapsin. The Kraken of the Crapsin.
Speaking of Kraken, has anyone tried the Kraken rum? It's actually really nice.
Oh, okay.
Captain Morgan's R. Oh God, no. The Empire smokes crack. No. No. I think the stuff on the ship's interesting, and when they meet up with the pirate lords, that's good stuff. I know Harry doesn't like that scene, but I find it quite amusing. And you have Keith Richards introduced as Jack's father, which is quite funny. And
she looks great.
And then when they make his mom, and then when they make Elizabeth a pirate lord, you could say it's a bit silly, but I don't mind it. It's kind of amusing. And
out of all the characters, why Elizabeth? Like, what?
Yeah, why not Orlando Bland, as Mark Kermode calls him? No, it's a bit silly, but I don't mind it. There is that one scene which is definitely out of the spaghetti western where they're on the island and Davy Jones is in the bucket, and got that music, and it's like Once Upon a Time in the West, or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, when they're like walking up to each other. Like, you just expect them to pull pistols and start shooting at each other. That scene, I think, it's obviously a direct homage to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or Once Upon a Time in the West, like that, with the music and the build up. But I think I just think the plot, like as well with Calypso, like Naomi Harris gets a lot more to do, and I like the scenes between her and Davy Jones, like when Davy Jones comes to see her and then she like touches him and we see like he's like a man, she turns it back into a man briefly, and we basically find out that he fell in love with her. And there's hints throughout all the film. There are some other good scenes as well, like when Jonathan Pryce characters, Governor Swan dies and she sees her father in the boat.
Like,
sorry,
why was he in it? He didn't actually do anything.
Yeah, that's one of the things I will say. He wasn't used that much in this film, but I think his death scene's quite good when he's on the boat and she's sort of calling out to him, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sending love from your mother," or whatever, and then he goes away. I think the finale is good as well. The stuff between Calypso and Davy Jones, like when they're in the cell, and he fell in love with her, and it turned out he was actually the one who cast her into female form, and she sort of wants to be released again. And that scene is quite interesting, where we see Barbossa performing the ritual, and she's released, and she sort of becomes a lot bigger, and she turns into those crabs or whatever, and she calls that big typhoon, that storm. I mean, I think the action here is really good. The finale action scene in particular is great. The ship battle, I think that's awesome. Like where you have like the pirate ships, and there's like thousands of British ships and Davy Jones. And I mean, it's interesting the dynamic as well between Beckett and Davy Jones. And I think Beckett gets a lot of good scenes, like that scene where he confronts Jack and he pulls a pistol at him, and then they sort of strike a deal. And I think Beckett here is really good. I mean, I think Tom Hollander is just, he's really good at playing the sort of manipulative, sort of damaged character. I mean, I think Beckett, you can definitely tell there's something, going on there. There's some kind of, there must have been something that happened in the past and made him that way. And I think Beckett is really good. And I have to disagree with Harry. I think his death is actually quite powerful. I mean, the action scene, and when the ship blows up,
he accepts his death. He just sort of walks into it knowing that he's going to die.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually that death scene is actually very powerful. I think Gore Verbinski's direction there is good. Like when he's chasing the Black Pearl, and then, yeah.
Bye now.
Oh, sorry, in the background. No, I mean, I think the scene at the end, where he's chasing Jack, and he thinks he is Jack, and then the Flying Dutchman's there, and they blow up the ship. I just think Tom Hollander's acting there is great, and the direction's great. Like, he's kind of shocked because he's never been in this situation before. He thought that he thought he was going to defeat Jack, but he's completely shocked by the situation. And then the whole place is sort of blowing up, and he walks down the stairs, and the whole ship's blowing up. I think that's really good direction, just to look in his face, and like the way it's directed, like him just sort of, he's basically in complete shock, really. And I think his death scene is powerful. The other action scenes as well, I think, are good. Like when they fight Davy Jones, and they have his heart, and Jack is fighting Davy Jones. That's good. And when Will's with Elizabeth, and I mean, one thing I will say, one thing I sort of found a bit cringy in the film was that scene where like they're like, "Oh, marry us," like when they're on the ship. It's just like
during the fight.
Really, yeah, during the fight, it's like, come on, this is ridiculous. It's like imagine it's like you may kiss the bride, and then like Orlando Bloom's head just gets chopped off or something like that. I mean, yeah, it's like well, your honeymoon's going to come to an end soon. No, I mean, I think Bootstrap Bill here is good as well. He gets less to do, but it's interesting that he's sort of part of the ship now. He's like that creature that we saw in the second film now is part of the ship. I think Norrington's death is quite good, where like he saves Elizabeth, and then he gets stabbed by Bootstrap Bill, and then Davy Jones comes to him and says, "Do you fear death?" And then Norrington just stabs Davy Jones. Like, I guess that's a no. Like,
nice sword.
Yeah, that's good. And I just think the characters here just get a lot more fleshed out. They get a lot more to do. I know Davy Jones, like, you see basically that he's doing this all for Calypso. He's sort of motivated by revenge because she's kind of cursed him to do this. And I think, the finale where you have Jack there and he's about to stab the heart, and Davy Jones stabs Will, and Jack stabs the heart, and he's like, Calypso, and he like falls into the storm.
Well, actually, it's technically Will that stabs the heart. Jack
Will, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And when he falls into the typhoon, and then yeah, and then the ending where we see Will basically becomes part of the Flying Dutchman. I mean, one thing I didn't get was like, why have to stay in land? Why can't she come to sea with him? Like,
yeah, they must really love each other to want to stay away from each other for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is I'm kind of glad that this is sort of well, it's not the last film in the series, but it's the last proper time to see Will and Elizabeth, because I think their story by this point is well and truly done. I mean, you can't really do much more with their characters. Yeah, I mean, the ending's good, and when he becomes a Flying Dutchman, we see, basically that they're ordinary people now. They don't have the barnacles anymore. And I think
doesn't look like his son.
Yeah, yeah, it still doesn't look like his son. But I mean, I think the ending's good, and when they all sort of, I mean, I'm trying to remember the ending now after the scene in the Dutchman. Oh yeah, like when Jack and all are sort of sailing off for the Fountain of Youth. That's it, the Fountain of Youth, and Barbossa takes back the map. I mean, at the time, I thought, they left the door open for a fourth one, but I thought this was going to be the last one, and Jack gets slapped again, which is funny. And he's sort of in the same situation he was in the first film. He sort of got a crap boat, and he's on his own, and
yeah.
And then when Barbossa takes the map out, and it's just the circle's missing with the Fountain of Youth, and that's the end of the film. And overall, I think at World's End, this is a really solid film. I think this is really good. I mean, I can understand if Harry has his issues with it. I can understand if he thinks it's too long and he just doesn't really care for the movie.
Yeah,
fair enough.
With it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's his opinion. But I mean, for me, even as a kid, it was my favorite. I mean, it's not my favorite now. I mean, I prefer the first one, but I still really enjoy World's End. It's still up there for me. I mean, yeah, there are a few issues. Like, I think some of the pacing could have been better. There are some cheesy scenes, like, when they're getting married on deck or whatever. But there's a lot of good stuff in here as well. I mean, I don't understand the hate that this film gets. I don't understand why some people absolutely despise it. I mean, I know Mark Commode hates all the Pirates of the Caribbean films. I mean, and when it comes to sequels, I don't get the universal loathing that the sequels get. I mean, most people sort of say the first one's good and the rest are shit. But I mean, I disagree. I mean, they're just fun romps, and I think the film, it's for me, it's a great sort of emotional wrap up. It sort of wraps up all the stories of the first two films, and wraps up the stories of this film. Beckett gets a lot more to do. Davy Jones, I think, is better here. There's a lot of action. There's still a lot of humor as well, and I mean, it keeps me engaged for all 2 hours and 50 minutes. I mean, yeah, it may be longer than the second film, but for me, it felt quicker because there was just more going on here, and it felt more like the conclusion to the story, and it felt like more things were happening here. And I mean, I think Jack's good, and his performance, and Naomi Harris is definitely great as Calypso, and I mean, and just all the characters here are used really well. They're all like, none of the characters here are really wasted, and yeah, and if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give A World's End a 8 out of 10.
Cool. So yeah, for me, I'd probably agree with Jack on this one. Sorry, Harry, you're outnumbered.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah, my opinion of this flip-flopped, but I'm pretty sure now that I like it, but I don't love it. I think it's solid. It's a good film. Second or first one for me, but it's still a very solid trilogy, or the first three anyway. Again, this movie suffers from being just way too long. It's just ridiculously long. I mean, I'm all for the big epic stories, and I like the continuation of it. But you could have done it in a much shorter running time. There's easily 20 minutes that you could cut out of this movie. At least 20 minutes of padding. That's how long this is. It's nearly 3 hours long, and it becomes a little bit of a chore to sit through some of it. But I think this is pretty good. I like the fact that it's probably one of the most epic films of the series. I love all the stuff in Singapore. I think that's quite interesting, and so Feng, that's interesting. Even though the character is wasted, it's still interesting to see him, even though he's pervy on Elizabeth. It's more to you than meets the eye, but the eye does not go wanting. what? That's weird. And then he tries to well, he thinks that she's Calypso, and he tries to, well, basically try it on with her. He's like, and I will take your fury. And then he just goes for her. It's like, there. I think this is a really fun film. I think there's a lot of fun. The story is really engaging. It's a nice continuation of the second one. More about the characters. Jack Sparrow is good here. I don't mind that it takes a while for him to appear because so much of the first two was focused on him. So it's nice to have a sort of a break from him and then come back to him later on as well, because there's also like 40 versions of him on screen at one time. So it's and it makes sense to kind of wait until, you know, we get to Davy Jones' locker. But I like the tensions of the story, like the fact that Will and Elizabeth aren't really talking because of what she did in the second film. Although all of that is just brushed off so easily. It's never like Will just kind of lets it go. He doesn't like. He confronts her about it in the scene below decks. It's awfully acted. It is so badly acted when he says, you know, if you make your choices alone, how can I trust you? It's like you wouldn't whisper that line. You would be more confrontational with that. But I mean, that aside, they kind of somehow they just resolve their differences. And you know, Will's kind of struggling. He has to make an ultimatum. Does he save his father, or does he choose to go with Elizabeth? Apparently, he can't have one or the other for whatever reason. Although in the end, he manages to do both, so it doesn't matter in the slightest. Barbosa is appreciated. It's nice to see him as a good guy, and he's sort of leading the crew, fighting alongside them. And you know, he's great. Jeffrey Rush is great. I think his best performance was probably in the first one, but he's still very good in the third one, and he does kick some ass in the action sequences. And he's kind of leading the meeting, the Brethren Court as well, which is nice. Elizabeth, oh god, she's okay in this movie. She's not as much of a bitch as she was in number 2, but still, making her the Pirate King was just forced. I mean, she's a woman as well, so why would she be a king? Why
not just make her the Pirate Queen?
Yeah, god, she's already a drama queen. But she's okay in this movie. I mean, it's sad when her father dies, you know, even though he's kind of pointless to the film. But it was quite sad when he was just kind of rowing past in the boat, and he was just like, you know, I think I'm dead. And her performance there is actually good. I'll give her that scene. But she's so wooden. Like, I don't believe her in her role, especially when she's with Orlando Bloom in this movie. Their chemistry, they've just given up by this point. They don't give a fuck. They don't look interested whatsoever. I mean, to be fair, there is a nice scene at the very end when they're on the beach and he's cut his heart out and put it in the chest, and he's like, will you keep it safe for me? And the music is really good when he goes, da, da, da,
literally stolen his heart.
I agree with Jack. Why didn't she just go with him? Like, if she wanted to marry him, surely she would have been like his first mate on the Dutchman. But well, maybe not. She'd rather stay away from him.
He'll masturbate her on the Dutchman.
Oh god. Yeah. Oh, so that's why the ship goes underwater. Anyway. The action when it's there is awesome. The movie does have a lack of action, but I don't think that's a major problem. It gets around it with the comedy. The film made me laugh quite a lot, so I can't deny I was entertained. Even though when we finally get to the big battle at the end, it is spectacular. It's awesome. I also like the fight in Singapore, and also there's a brief sea battle near the middle of the film. There's a couple of little action bits near the middle of the film. But yes, the movie is needlessly long, and it does feel long, and I did kind of wish it was over sooner than it was, but I thought, you know what, and I enjoyed it. I mean, Will and Elizabeth getting married during the final fight was interesting, I guess. It was kind of sweet, but easy. I love Davy Jones in this film, even though he's not really in control in this movie. His emotional backstory is more explained here, and the scene with him and Calypso in the brig, I think, is one of the highlights of this film. When he says, "Oh, I do not love you," and he's in denial. He obviously does love her, but he's still heartbroken about what she did and how she kind of cursed him, and obviously the kind of a revenge thing going on. They've both been deceived by each other, but there's still a love there. And when she changes him to his human form for a second, that's quite nice. I actually bought their chemistry. It was actually very sweet. She was like, "My sweet, you're confident." I was actually very happy to see him, and I love that they both share two of the same lockets. That was really nice. That was sweet. And also the scene was entered the Endeavour, and he sees Beckett and Will having tea, and he says, "I cannot bear someone like some." And then Will basically guesses that obviously Calypso is the one that he loved, and he's like, "Oh, after which betrayal did you cut out your heart, I wonder?" He's like, "Do not test me." I haven't finished that. That was good. Bootstrap Bill was good in this film. He's kind of messed up. He's kind of confused because he's become part of the ship. He can't really tell what's going on. He's got more barnacles across his face. There's a good scene with him and Elizabeth when she's in the brig with her crew. That's quite nice. I just wish that it wasn't him that killed Norrington. I think Norrington should have been killed by Davy Jones or someone else. Yeah. Because Bootstrap doesn't know him, and it's just like, it doesn't feel right. But Norrington's death is still powerful enough, and it's sad. I mean, he gets to kiss Elizabeth once. You can see the guy still really does love her, and he's a good man. And besides, he realizes that Beckett isn't really the person he should be on side with, and he dies saving them. And as Jack said, the Fantastic Moment appears, and they go, "Oh, the Admiral's dead. The Admiral's dead." And he's like, "James Norrington, do you fear death?" And he stabs him. He's like, "I take that as a no." Nice sword. That was good. I really love the death of Lord Cutler Beckett. Beckett is better in this film. I don't think he's fantastic, but he's good enough. He's serviceable. He has some good moments. He has a good scene with Jack. He also got some good moments with Davy Jones when he's trying to belittle him, when he says, "I would have thought you learnt that when I ordered you to kill your pet. This is no longer your world, Jones." How he's got a hold over a lot. So which is really interesting. So yeah, and his death is spectacular and powerful. The one just is this in slow motion when the ship blows up, and the music is epic, and he just accepts it. He starts to get a bit teary as well when he's like, "It's just good business," and I think it's powerful. I think it's very good, and the ending of the film. Sorry, Jack. What were you saying?
I was just saying I agree about his death being powerful.
Yeah. I love the ending. It's a happy ending. It wraps up. Also, the Shipwreck Cove scene, the Brethren Court, is really nice. That's good. It's funny, and maybe it's a bit long, but I don't mind it. Seeing Jack's father was quite fun. And he holds up the skull and he says, "Oh, how's Mum? She looks great." That was funny. And the scene was good. I love the build up to it. And when Jack says, "Oh, Polly," and they walk across it, and the music is playing, and you get all these close-up shots of the characters, which is nice, which is really cool. And the ending is set up nicely. Davy Jones dies, falling into the, and obviously Calypso is unleashed into this massive storm, and then Will becomes the captain of the Dutchman. Will and Elizabeth are married. There's a lovely scene on the beach. Jack gets chucked off of his own ship, and he's back on the little boat where he was in the first one, so it sort of comes full circle. Gibbs is also there for some reason, and the movie ends on a sort of an open note for On Stranger Tides. I think it's got a lot of heart as well, like the emotional scenes towards the end, like particularly with Will almost dying, is is quite intense. I would say, yeah, Chow Yun-fat is definitely wasted. He could have done so much more. Because he was a really interesting character, but as you know, we've all said, he was only in about 2 or 3 scenes, so he didn't add anything to the story whatsoever, other than that they had to go and get charts from him in the beginning of the film. Also, the opening is a bit too dark. I mean, the song is really good, the Hoist the Colours, but just the hanging stuff is a bit much.
One thing I will say is you don't actually see the gig getting hanged, which is good. You just see them pull the lever. And
yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's one thing. You don't see it, but you do see a lot of the dead bodies. So it is a bit grim. But I mean, it works, but it can be a bit much. But I think the song is really effective.
Also, is this the film where Jack shoots the bird in the coffin and he comes out at the start?
No, that's yeah. So overall, a solid film. It's not perfect. It has a few flaws. Also, it's never really explained how Calypso actually brought Barbossa back to life. She just kind of says, "I brought you back to life." It's like would have been nice to know, but oh well. And the comedies, scene with Jack and Barbossa are arguing over who's the captain, and then Pinto comes in and goes, "Stop it, the both of you. That's an order. Understand?" Then they just stop for a minute and be like, "Oh, sorry, I just thought I'd throw my name in for consideration. Sorry." There's some great moments, and also with the telescope as well. And also when they turn the ship upside down, that's a Hans Zimmer score. Again, is just superb. The score overall, but that score for that scene is just brilliant. And you know, and also the scene after that is quite funny. And yeah, seeing the dead Kraken was a shame in one way, but I think probably having the Kraken in this film may not have worked. I think
I agree. Yeah.
As much as I like the Kraken, it might not have worked because there's so much else going on that it would have just felt forced to have it in there. I think it was great for the second film though. So Our World's End, I think it's underrated. It's not as convoluted as people make it out. I was able to follow the story very well. It is way too long, and it does need trimming. But visually, it's also very impressive. Like the visual effects are just as good as Dead Man's Chest. It's got a bit more comedy, I think, than Dead Man's Chest.
Yeah.
But I prefer Dead Man's Chest as a film because of the mystery and the fact that it is a darker film and suspense in that film for me anyway. And I have fun, and it's not as long as well. So yeah, even though it is still long. I'm going to score At World's End an 8 out of 10. I'm with Jack on this one. So, let's move on to the fourth movie, which is a very refreshing change. Harry, would you like to join me on Stranger Tides now?
Absolutely, mate. So, on Stranger Tides, I know a lot of people don't like this movie, and I know, Ollie, this is your personal least favourite, but I'm sorry. Gotta completely disagree. I really enjoy On Stranger Tides.
It's your opinion.
No, just fuck off! Joking.
That's okay.
Your friend
when me and my mum and my sister first saw On Stranger Tides 6 years ago, we came out because so happy with smiles on our faces. We could not understand why this movie was being just panned by critics, and why everybody was calling it the worst film in the series. It's as if the critics just refused to see any good in the pirate sequels, and they only like Curse the Black Pearl. But
yeah, I agree with that. I don't see why critics sequels.
Yeah, they're just being biased pretty much. But
they don't like going to the fair. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, probably. And And just what makes this film a great improvement and step up from Dead Man's Chest at World's End is that the story is back to basics. It's back to the simplistic, fun, adventure plots of the first movie, which is what I wanted from Dead Man's Chest at World's End, which was already a great refreshing change for me. Just I could actually understand what was going on. I was never bored. I was actually excited and engaged throughout the running time. Yeah. I think it is perfect. It's back to a similar running times of the first film, and the pacing, it's a miracle compared to at World's End. Thank goodness, and I'm glad Gore Verbinski didn't return, because it wouldn't have worked. I'm glad they got a fresh new director and
I think he was very clear in that he wanted that after the third one he was done. I think that was his exit pretty much set there. I don't think he would ever return again after that.
Yeah, you can tell he intended Pirates of the Caribbean to just be a trilogy, but I'm glad they made this movie. Actually, I know some people say it's unnecessary, but I think if it improves over the previous two, then by all means make it, which I think it did that just exactly. And it has a new director, Rob Marshall, and a whole new cast, inject some fresh new blood into this franchise, which it desperately needs. Thank God Will and Elizabeth do not reprise their roles for this movie. And yeah, Johnny Depp, thankfully, is better here as Jack Sparrow, and as he gets more to do, and he's actually the main character, which is what I love to see. And Penelope Cruz is actually she's actually pretty great as Angelica. She does get a lot of hate, but she's way more interesting and more enjoyable than Elizabeth for me. And
I agree.
Her romance. Yeah, and her romance with Jack is actually pretty funny, I say, and just Ian McShane is stupendous as Blackbeard. Yeah, Ian McShane is always great as playing villains, just like he played Tai Lung in Kung Fu Panda and Ragnar in The Golden Compass, and now Blackbeard, and Blackbeard has a great he has a great musical score. He's every time he was on scene, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, particularly in his introduction, and I love his crew as well. His crew are just terrifying, and the mermaid scene is easily the best part of the movie. That is just awesome. Oh yeah, and I actually thought that originally that the first mermaid we see was played by Amanda Seyfried, but I really got that wrong, because she did look a lot like Amanda Seyfried. So yeah, big mistake. And
wait, sorry, did you Amanda Seyfried? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, I just said I thought at first that the first mermaid we see was played by Amanda Seyfried, but I obviously got that wrong.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant Amanda Seyfried. Oh, the name must have gone in the name. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, and yeah, in regards to the romance between Serena and Philip, people just hate this romance. I don't understand it. I think it was really sweet, and I think it's a romance I actually cared about in these movies. It's definitely a better romance and more powerful than Will and Elizabeth, which was so bland and forced for me.
Which took a whole trilogy.
Exactly. And Serena, I think she's awesome. She's one of my favorite Pirates of the Caribbean characters. I mean, Astrid Burgess-Frisby, I haven't seen her in much else, but she should really get more work. I mean, she's so sympathetic how she's captured and tortured for her tear by Blackbeard, and Philip, he's just protecting her and standing by her side all the way. Yeah, he's a pretty nice guy, and I'm glad the movie has actually a lot of location shots and doesn't go overboard with the CGI, unlike Dead Man's Chest at World's End, and and Barbossa even returns greatly to this film. Unlike in at World's End, they actually do something fresh and original with him by having him no longer be a pirate but in the Royal Navy, and of course you get his motivation as he wants his revenge on Blackbeard for giving him, of course, the peg leg. And the action here is smaller in scale than World's End, but I don't care. That's what makes it all the more fun. That's what these movies are supposed to be. That's what it's all about, fun. It's brought back here. Yeah, also the one weak point the one criticism I would make about this movie is that a couple of characters like the Spanish are pretty wasted. They only appear like 2 or 3 times. You probably could have taken them out of the film, and it's good to see Mr. Gibbs return. He's one of the old cast that does.
Mr. Tibb. Sorry, what was it? Mr. Gibbs. Yeah, Gibbs. Oh.
Yeah, Mr. Gibbs. Yeah. He. It's nice to see him back, but he does only get like 2 scenes, which he could have definitely got a bit more screen time. And despite those criticisms, I'd still thoroughly enjoy On Stranger Tides. This is for me the movie that brought the Pirates franchise back on track. It really saved it, and the climax where Jack has to really choose to give the cup with the tear or the death cup to either Blackbeard or Angelica. That was really tense. That was a finale where I finally cared since Curse of the Black Pearl, and just On Stranger Tides. It's such a entertaining blockbuster, and it's probably my second favorite in the series. Yes, I think it's that good. I would say this is the most underrated movie in the franchise and highest grossing film in the series. So obviously a lot of people did go and see it and like it. So yeah, I am proud to score On Stranger Tides a 9 out of 10. So Jack, do you like it as much as me or not?
Still there, Ollie?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, yeah.
He called for you, not me.
Yeah, no, I was just checking if you were there as well. Yeah, on Stranger Tides, I'm sorry I have to disagree with you, Harry. I mean, I like On Stranger Tides, but it's far from my favorite in the series. I mean, after A World's End, I'm going to be honest, I think it's a bit of a disappointment. I mean, the first time I saw it, I really enjoyed it, but on rewatch, it's mediocre. I mean, I think Rob Marshall's direction here is just it's just okay. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's just not brilliant either. I mean, I think Johnny Depp here, I'm going to be honest, is probably his weakest performance of the series, and I've seen all 5. He's just kind of, it's just the same performance once again. I mean, he's not bad, but I mean, it just doesn't, he's just not really stretching himself as an actor here. I mean, he's just kind of, doing the same thing again. And it's like, okay, we know, we know what you're trying to do as Captain Jack Sparrow, but it's just kind of, I mean, it's just getting a bit pointless now. I mean, one thing I will say about the films is when we get to the 4th one, it's just Jack just doesn't really go on a journey anymore. I mean, his character doesn't really go through any progression, and I mean, I think the story here, The Fountain of Youth, yeah, I mean, it's more simplified, which is a good thing, but I just find I don't know, I just think the stakes are a lot lower here, and it just feels like Rob Marshall was just kind of trying to copy Gore Verbinski. I mean, one thing I will say is, I will say that that's good about this film is that Penelope Cruz is a nice addition to the film. I think she was good. The opening, I have to say, opening 20-30 minutes, I'm sorry, it just kind of dragged for me. I mean, the stuff in court was good, but then, we have him running around in London. I mean, there's a nice Judi Dench cameo, but the action kind of goes on a bit. The scene with King George IV is good. Like, we got the guy played Mr. Dursley from Harry Potter playing King George, which is good. But I mean, as for some of the other stuff, like I just think that the film, it just feels kind of a bit tired. I mean, the first 20 to 30 minutes, I pretty much guessed all the stuff that was going to happen, like, action scene, and, we had another action scene after that. I mean, I think there are positives here, don't get me wrong. Like, I think Jeffrey Rush's Barbossa is great once again. I think this is one of his best performances in the series because we see him go to the other side in this film. He's now become a privateer for the Navy. And, I mean, that wig is kind of hilarious, and the makeup. And, I mean, I think Jeffrey Rush here definitely gives one of his best performances. I think Johnny Depp, though, he's just kind of sleepwalking through some of the scenes. Like, he just kind of, I mean, he's not bad, but he's just kind of like, same performance, just kind of, he's just phoning it in, really. That's all I have to say. He's kind of phoning it in. I think Ian McShane is Blackbeard. I mean, I think the stuff on the ship is good. Like, although I will say that fight between Penelope Cruz's character and Johnny Depp, like, it just kind of that sword fight reminded me a lot of the first film.
When Angelica fights Jack.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a lot of the fight between Will in the first film, like when they're fighting on the rafters or whatever. I mean, we got a cameo by Keith Richards again, which is cool, I guess. I just feel like, the film takes its time. Like, the first 20 to 30 minutes kind of feels slow. There are some good new characters introduced, like Stephen Graham as Scrum. He's good, and he'll return in the next film. And Stephen Graham, I think, is a great actor, he's one of the most underrated actors working today. I mean, he was in This Is England. He played Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire with Steve Buscemi. He was in Gangs of New York as well, and he's a great actor, and he's good as Scrum. I mean, Ian McShane is Blackbeard. I think he's good, but I'm going to have to agree with Ollie now, thinking about it. He's probably the weakest villain in the series. He just doesn't do much. I mean, Blackbeard, I've always liked Blackbeard as, reading about Blackbeard. But I mean, I think just Blackbeard as a character here, he just doesn't do much. The Queen's Anne's Revenge is cool, though. I think that's cool. The way it sort of comes to life. Although I think this is, where the film's sort of running out of ideas. It's like, he resurrects, crew members, makes them into zombies. I mean, the real Edward Teach never did that. If you read up on him, I mean, I know it's a Disney film, but it was kind of like, do we need a zombie crew? I mean, I'm gonna have to disagree with Harry again on the missionary and the mermaid. I really couldn't give a fuck about their relationship. I'm sorry to say. I mean, their relationship is just so pointless. It's like, oh, Will and Elizabeth, now that they're gone, let's have another love story. And it's like, who gives a fucking rat's arse, It's completely pointless. I mean, the missionary guy, he's just standing for Orlando Bloom. So is the mermaid. I mean, they're both attractive. Yeah. I mean, they're both attractive, I guess, but they just add nothing to the film. They're just pointless. Like, you could have just easily removed them and he wouldn't have added or taken away anything from the film.
I mean, I guess you could say it was kind of sweet that he cared for her, but other than that, it doesn't really add anything to the film. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I will say is I like the mermaid scene. The scene where that's probably one of the best scenes in the film. That's good. That's well directed. Like when they're singing "My Jolly Sailor Boat" and the mermaids are there, and they sort of lure them into the water, and like, there's that funny bit. Scrum is like, I have a kiss from a proper mermaid. But hold on one sec.
Jack's gone to kiss a mermaid.
Yep.
Oh, Harry, what were you saying before we interrupted? Sorry.
I was just gonna quickly mention. Well, when you were talking about you could have taken Serena and Philip out of the film. Well, without Serena's tear, they never would have found the Fountain of Youth.
That's very true.
I'm just saying you could have taken their love relationship out of the film.
But going on, I just think that I mean, there are some good action scenes. Like I think the Queen's Honor Revenge is cool. I mean, the one thing I don't like is the fact that the film just kind of feels like a paint by numbers plot. It's like, oh, we have to find the final youth. It's kind of like, it's not. It's like, who really? It's like, I don't really care that much. There are some funny scenes, like when they throw the voodoo doll over the river and he's like, "You'll live," and then he jumps in. That's good. But I mean, I think the mermaid scene is good. Scrum's like, "I have a kiss from a proper mermaid," and they're lured in, and then the missionary guy gets saved by the mermaid. But the whole Serena and mermaid subplot, I'm sorry, Harry, but for me, it just felt pointless. I just felt like, okay, well, there's just another Will and Elizabeth thing, and for me, I was actually more engaged with that because at least the characters were a bit fleshed out more. Here, it's just some random missionary dude who happens to fancy a bit of fish,
Okay, fair enough.
He's attracted to a trout, I guess you could actually say.
Oh, well, and guess what? The writers, they're not sorry.
Yeah, well, they made money, so of course we're not sorry. I just feel their whole story I couldn't give a fuck about, and there's just some really cheesy dialogue like, "Oh, I love you," life wouldn't mean anything without you. Oh, Jesus, I'm not joking. When I was rewatching, I was just cringing.
Oh, the worst line for me was when Blackbeard said, "You care for her, you fancy her." It's clear to my eyes. And when he said "you fancy her," I was like, "Is this real? What?"
Yeah.
He actually said.
And then one thing I will say, I like the mutiny on ship, and Blackbeard comes out and he's like, "I was in my cabin resting," although I don't understand how he falls for the story of Penelope Cruz's character being his daughter. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous. It's like, "Oh, I am actually his daughter." No, you're not. Load of bullshit.
I didn't believe it either.
Yeah. Penelope Cruz is good, though. I think I agree with Harry that her relationship with Johnny Depp is really good. It's kind of a shame she didn't come back for the recent film, but she's great here, and her chemistry between Jack is great. Like I said, Johnny Depp just kind of sort of stumbles his way through the scenes. He just gives I think you can just tell by this point he's sort of doing it for the paycheck. I think the stuff as well, like the Spanish, they're kind of wasted. I mean, I think the locations are good. When they find the Fountain of Youth, that's cool. But I think the film is too long. I mean, it's the shortest. Well, it's one of the shortest out of the series, but it just feels, they're just padding in some scenes. I think, especially the first 20 to 30 minutes. I mean, when they have to go off and then he meets Barbosa in the ship, that's quite good. And they have to balance out the ship, and then they're looking at the map and they find the stones, that's good. And then they have to recover the chalices, that's good. And I like that stuff. And he was like, Aqua, the video. And I like the fact that Barbosa gets more backstory. Like we find out that the pearl was taken by Blackbeard, and he basically had to cut his own leg off because the ship was, capturing him, and now he's a peg leg, and he's sort of out for revenge with Blackbeard. And I think that stuff's cool. Like, Blackbeard, he's basically being warned about his death, about the one-legged man. And the guy from the Navy actually did kill Blackbeard. I mean, I think the finale is decent. Like when they arrive, that's cool. Although I don't understand, like he touches the puddle and he goes up into the thing. Like that's weird. But I think the finale's good, and there's that funny line where it's like, "I claim this island in the British Empire," and the guy shoots him. He's like, "Make a note of that man's bravery." Like that's funny. And we find out the Spanish are actually there to destroy the fountain, and they destroy the chalices and they throw them away. And we see Jack basically, we see Blackbeard gets killed, and Penelope Cruz's character takes his sword out, and she's got poison on the sword, and when he gives him the chalice and he like swaps the Tea of the Mermaid and stuff. I mean, I think the Tea of the Mermaid thing, like that's weird. Like when they're taking the mermaid. I mean, one thing I didn't understand was when the mermaid, when the glass cabinet of water smashes and the mermaid's, tail turns into feet, into human feet. I don't get that. Like, how the hell does that happen? And then when she goes back into the water, how does she turn into a mermaid again? I just don't understand that. And yeah, just the whole stuff between her and the Christian missionary, I could not give a fucking flying rat's arse about that stuff. Just pointless. Her and Serena, I'm sorry, but I take the Elizabeth stuff over that any day. I mean, it's just pointless, in my opinion. I think the ending is good, though. And, and when she's tricked into getting the mermaid tear. And I mean, one thing I didn't understand, I mean, the missionary's throat was cut and he somehow survived. That didn't make sense. But the ending is interesting where, he gives Blackbeard, the cup, and he's like, this one gives life, this one takes it away, and he takes the one that gives life and he drinks it, and she's like, she drinks the one, and then it turns out Jack swapped them, and you see him turn into bones, like he turns from flesh, and I think the visual effects good, like the tornado thing where it turns from bones into flesh and then into a skeleton. That's good. And the ending's quite funny where he leaves her on the island. She's like, Jack, I love you. And he's like, I gotta go. And she's like, come back, you bastard. Like, that stuff's really funny. And then when he goes off at the end and they find a bottle of the Black Pearl, and he's like, oh, that monkey. I hate that monkey. And they walk off, and that's good. And the post-credit scene's interesting where she finds a voodoo doll. I mean, it's funny they didn't bring that up in the next film, the post-credit scene at the end of the fourth film with her and the voodoo doll. They could have brought her back for the fifth one. But, I mean, overall, on Stranger Tides, this is a good film. I don't think it's a bad film, don't get me wrong. I mean, I prefer it to Dead Man's Chest. I mean, I think the plot is good, but I just think it's disappointing after particularly the third and the third film. I just feel like the stakes are lower. The love story, the missionary, I couldn't give it, I just couldn't give a bottle of rum for their shit, the mission. It's completely pointless love story. We didn't need that again. And Johnny Depp kind of phones in this performance, and Ian McShane's Blackbeard. Yeah, and Ian McShane, while he's good as Blackbeard, just kind of he's pointless. He does nothing really in the film. He's just kind of, he's not bad, but he doesn't get much to do. He's just not that great. I mean, for me, he's the weakest villain. I probably agree with Ollie now. I mean, at least Davy Jones gets more to do than Blackbeard. And
Davy Jones has 2 films.
yeah. I think Ian McShane could have been better if he got more to do. I just think overall it's a good film, but there's just there are parts of it that drag, and I just think that there are things that could have improved, like take out the whole love story, because nobody cares about that, and I know Harry does, but I don't. Take out the whole, I mean, the funny thing's good, but just you could have done more of the Spanish. You could have had Blackbeard do more, and just you could have trimmed the first 20 to 30 minutes down. So overall, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Decent, but not the best in the series. Not the worst either.
Well. On Stranger Tides. Yeah, I like it. I used to like it a lot more when it came out, and over the years, I on the recent rewatch, I was surprised how much I didn't enjoy it as much as I used to. It's definitely a good film, but it's far from my favourite of the series. It's actually my least favourite. But it's not bad at all. I just think there's so much that could be improved upon it. I personally feel that whilst the story's good and it's refreshing, it's nice to be sort of going back to basic, the big epic scale of 2 and 3. It for me, it's just remarkably ordinary. There's nothing that stands out to me as being remotely eye-catching. There's nothing that makes me go, wow, that's Pirates of the Caribbean. It's just like, it's another adventure, we're going on another quest to find another object. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll go with it. I think the pacing is really on and off. Like, the 1 minute the movie's moving quite fast, then it's moving slow. And then it just goes back and forth, distant pace. And
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and you can tell that it's directed by someone else. I mean, Rob Marshall, I don't know what the guy's done before. He does an all right job here, but I don't think it's as polished as some of Gore Verbinski's direction of the first three. I mean, the story's all right, I guess. You know, there's not much to it really. It's fine. It's fine for what it is. Johnny Depp is good as Jack Sparrow in this film. I think he is kind of funny, but I don't think it's his best performance at all. But he does have a couple of good lines, and his chemistry with Penelope Cruz is very strong. And Penelope Cruz's Angelica is really good, and the film definitely benefits from no Will and Elizabeth this time because their story is done. So nice to see new characters. They've had a bit of a cast clear out, which is nice. I just don't buy the whole her being the daughter of Blackbeard. I never believed it. I just never believed it. Whether it's actually true is actually never confirmed. But obviously the film wants us to think that, well, she is in some ridiculous, convoluted way, which is never really explained. I mean, the only line that gives us any indication is when he says, "Oh, Latin blood like our mother." But to be honest, I still don't believe it. But that's just me. Speaking of which, Ian McShane as Blackbeard, he's good, but he's not as good as I remember. I mean, he has some pretty intense scenes, like when he first appears. His introduction is amazing. When he's giving a slow speech, and then he's using his sword. He draws the sword and he says, "Mutineers, hang!" And then the music rises. It gets really epic, and then he sort of ties the ropes around his crew, and it's really intense. And he sends the guy out on the boat, and he burns him, which is quite epic and powerful. But also when he's taunting Serena, trying to make her cry, that's really he's a bastard. But again, the worst line he delivers is, "You care for her, you fancy her." I mean, oh, that's such a bad line. That's such a squishy line of dialogue. I mean, it's not as bad as if it weren't for these bars, I'd have you know. It's not a Blackbeard. Like, someone else should have delivered that line, not Blackbeard. I have to disagree. For me, this crew, they just suck. I mean, they're just. I mean, the zombie idea is okay, but we don't really see the crew very much. And
would you agree that it's really harsh? It's like, oh, we've had the undead crew the first, and then we get the underworld.
No, I wouldn't say it's a rehash. I'd just say it's an idea that doesn't really work because they're in it so little. I think all the crews that we've seen aren't borrowed from each other. I think they're actually all individually original ideas. I just don't think that this crew have any particular personality compared to the other crews. Like, I like the Flying Dutchman crew a lot. I like Barbossa's crew in the first film a lot. I don't mind Salazar's crew in the fifth one. They look really cool. But this crew, they're just nothing. They're just there. They are just nothing. So yeah, one person, and also not having the Black Pearl crew in here was as well. I mean, obviously we got Gibbs, but he's in it because he's sort of has to be. He's like forced into the plot, really. It's weird that he's with Barbossa for most of the film. Barbossa in this movie is good. He's in a different kind of position in this film. He's a privateer, and he's not. He doesn't care about the king, but it's an excuse for him to get a ship and a crew and go after Blackbeard to get revenge for cutting off his leg. I thought that was an interesting storyline. I didn't expect that. I thought that was quite good. And Jeffrey Rush does a good job in the scenes he's in. For me, the film, it just, I mean, I don't mind it being more simplistic, and I think it works for that. But again, the lack of Will and Elizabeth definitely helps it. But it just feels very standard. It's like, you know, very just by the numbers. It's like, yeah, this is Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, whilst on the one hand it feels refreshing, on the other hand it's like it's only refreshing because of the cast changes.
Like not being much there, done that.
Kind of, in the sense of the story. But I mean, I had fun with it. I'm not gonna lie, I had fun with it. But I just don't think that anything particularly stands out in this movie. The action is the fight with Jack and Angelica. I do like that. The mermaid scene is the best scene in the movie. That's really intense, and the way the music builds up for that is awesome, especially with the Jolly Sailor Bold song. I can confirm to you, Harry, that the actress that plays that mermaid is Gemma Ward.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Gemma Ward, yeah. Yeah, thanks. I got her confused with Amanda Seyfried, yeah.
Yeah, she's basically the Australian twin of Amanda Seyfried. But she's yeah, she's cool. The mermaids are pretty creepy. Surprised at how creepy they were. I mean, the romance. What was the point of it? I just don't think it's at all needed. Why was it there? I mean, just to replace Will and Elizabeth. But you know, I mean, it was nice to see that he cared for her the way he did, and she actually saved his life and etc. But it goes nowhere. It adds nothing. Again, it's a bums on seats thing. It's like, oh, let's bring more of the fangirls back into this series with this stupid romance.
The dialogue was cringy as well. Like, oh, I love you and all. Oh, Jesus.
Well, different. But they never actually say to each other, "I love you." I think it's just like she goes, "Oh, you're different." Something like that.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah. I didn't mind the dialogue so much. It was more just the whole point of the romance. And
yeah, I agree. Pointless. It's like another Will and Elizabeth thing to get bums on seats.
Yeah, I mean, there was just no chemistry for me. Even though it was nice to know that Philip cared for her as much as he did, and yes, I can't deny I couldn't take my eyes off her. Astrid Burgess Frisbee, very good-looking French actress, but the romance could have just been cut. They didn't need that. Towards the second act, like they're just wandering around the jungle doing nothing. It's like Blackbeard, he's good in the brief scenes, like when he's being intimidating to people, but the rest of the film he's walking around. He doesn't do anything really, which is a shame. But what the hell? It's not a major complaint because he's still good enough for what the film has. The climax of the film is a little bit underwhelming for me. It's not bad, but it could have been longer. Like the end fight was just very quick. It was just over too quickly. I mean, Barbossa's fight with Blackbeard was good, but the rest of it was just like the action scene. I don't think Rob Marshall, and I think it shows. Which is unfortunate, but it's not like atrocious. But it's just I just wanted more from it. Although Blackbeard's death is pretty powerful, pretty epic. I mean, when he says, "Oh," and then she drinks the chalice, and and then Jack says, "Oh, actually, it was the other way around." And when he becomes a skeleton, and then she's like, "Oh, you bastard! How could you?" Yeah, and he leaves her on the island, which was funny. One of the funniest lines of the film was when she said, "Oh, when he's like, if you had a sister and a dog, I'd choose the dog." I thought that was great. And and just before he leaves, when she says, "Oh, I love you," he's like, "As do I." And then he's about to kiss her, and he's like, "I gotta go." Jack, and he kind of waves his hands, and then he just leaves her on the island, which is kind of funny.
I just love the way it's building up, and it goes do 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 do. I gotta go, like.
Yeah, it's a shame. They should have called the fifth movie Angelica's Revenge. She could have come. She should have come back and got Jack. I love the score by Hans Zimmer. The music score is fantastic. It definitely captures the adventure feeling of the first film and the sort of the action of the 2 and 3, which is great. It's nice to see Keith Lee. The Judi Dench cameo is that was funny when she goes, "Oh, is that it?" That was good.
Yeah.
The London chase is actually entertaining. I really do like that. And the scene with Richard Griffiths as the king is funny. Like when he says he escaped, and he's like, "Leave it to me, sire." And then he puts his thumbs up and he does a little grin. I thought that was hilarious. The production design is good. I'll give it that. It definitely has the sort of scope and the budget of movies. which is good. But it's refreshing. It's refreshing, but to me, it doesn't of the first film, or even for me the second film. It's not as long as the third film, which helps, but it still sags a little bit. I think Rob Marshall's direction is okay, but it could be stronger. At the end of the movie's fine. It wraps up pretty nicely. It's just a basic, fun, standard rompy of an adventure. There's not much to it, really. I don't know what else to say. The CGI and visual effects are impressive, like especially with the mermaids. Again, the romance kind of just goes nowhere and pointless. They add nothing to the movie. I mean, the opening scene is just completely unnecessary. Like, they find the guy who washes up on the sea, and then they take him to the Spanish guy, and then they're like, "How soon can you sail with the tide?" And it's like we only see them like 2 more times. I mean, you understand why they want to destroy the Fountain of Youth because of this. They believe it's sacrilegious, but we needed to see the antagonists. Well, not the antagonists, and as we needed to have them included in the plot. It would have made it a bit more grounded, because it just feels like the plot is kind of nothing without them, really. Because obviously, Eternal Life kind of wants it just because, you know, he's in the movie, so he kind of just threw it because, you know, obviously because Charles, which lead to it. So, you know, to gain eternal life, because he's already died once, so he doesn't want to die again. Barbosa is only going after Black. He wants it. There's a lot of people going after these objects, and this is a problem that happens in the next film as well. So yeah, but I mean, overall, on Stranger Tides, it's a decent movie. It's good fun, but it's not really anything more than that. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's a shame because I used to like it a lot more, but yeah, it's just terribly ordinary. That's all I can say. So
I think I'd give it a 7 as well.
Yeah, I mean, we now move on to the 5th and most recent film of the Pirates of the Caribbean series, Salazar's Revenge, or Dead Men Tell No Tales, wherever you live in the world. So, Harry, what is your opinion of Salazar's Revenge / Dead Men Tell No Tales?
Oh, well, firstly, I'm gonna call it Dead Men Tell No Tales. I definitely prefer the US title. I don't know why the UK title doesn't like the word dead in the title for whatever reason, but I mean, they accepted Dead Man's Chest in the title, but anyway, yeah, Dead Men Tell No Tales. This movie has been a long time coming. I can't believe it took them 6 years to make a 5th movie after On Stranger Tides, billion-dollar success, and I'm really disappointed with the critics for just they given this movie, because I actually enjoyed it. I had a great fun time with this movie, as did my mum and my sister and my whole family. Yeah, we once again disagree with the critics. This is neither the best nor worst in the series for me, but it's a decent fun entry in the series. And if this is the last film, I don't know if they are going to do a 6th. They would have done a good job wrapping up this franchise the best way they could for now. And yeah, this movie is actually the first in the series to be directed by 2 directors, two Norwegian guys, and for the most part they do a great job, just like Rob Marshall did. I'm glad that this movie is still simplistic, just like on Stranger Tides and Curse of the Black Pearl. I get what's going on. It's not too complicated and too epic, thank God. And though I do think the plot is a kind of a rip-off of On Stranger Tides, where they have to go after a certain object. Only this time it's the Trident of Poseidon, whereas in the last movie it was Fountain of Youth. So yeah, plot
Well,
would
I
have
guess
been
you could
just
say it's a rip-off of all the plots, because they all have a similar plot, going on a quest or something.
Yeah.
well, yeah. For the 5th outing, they could have had something a little different, but still not a bad plot. this is probably my least favorite performance from Johnny Depp. Actually, I mean, he's still really funny and entertaining, and great to see him back as Jack Sparrow after all these years. But the writing is just making him into a running side gag at this point. I mean, it's just losing the clever, witty Jack Sparrow that we loved in the original movie.
Would you say he's too drunk in this film?
Yeah, definitely. At points, he really acts bizarrely, as if he was drunk. And although I do in though I do enjoy the new characters for the most part. I mean, Henry Turner is I related to him as he just wants his dad back. Basically, you can understand his motivation for finding the Triton as he wants to break Will's curse.
I mean, were you surprised at the opening scene with him and Will on the Dutchman?
Yeah, that was a beautiful opening. That was so heartfelt, and I should mention that even though Will and Elizabeth are hyped up to return in this movie, you shouldn't go and see it for them because they are only in it for like literally a few minutes. So, and though Henry Turner, I do like him. The actor gave an okay performance, but Karina was a pretty enjoyable character, and the whole twist with her being Barbossa's daughter was something that gives her much more of a point of being there, and you can see why she's finding the Trident as well. For her father, who she doesn't even know, and the twist that she was Barbossa's daughter really gave Barbossa an emotional send-off, because although Barbossa doesn't have much of a point being in this film until the very end, of course, when he does sacrifice himself for her, that was such a powerful send-off to character. That kind of made me tear up. But though he may return in the series, because this is literally the second time he's been killed off, I wouldn't be surprised.
I think this is it. I think because he's died once already and he's already been brought back to life, I don't think they'll do it again. I think he's done with the series now. But yeah.
I guess people wouldn't buy it if he came back to life for a third time. That is a good point. And Captain Salazar is a great villain. Javier Bardem, who of course played the Bond villain Sylvia in Skyfall, one of my favorite Bond movies. He is he's pretty fantastic. I mean, the CGI on him looks incredibly creepy. Love his intimidating design, but also he's a very personal enemy for Jack. I love his backstory where Jack tricked him into going to his own death, and you could get his motivation for wanting to get back at Jack, and the young Jack Sparrow was actually a CGI Johnny Depp, which was extremely clever, and this movie really benefits from being the shortest Pirates film. Just the 2-hour running time was absolutely perfect. I am glad that they have learned from At World's End that you don't need to go 3 hours. And the action sequences, just like on Stranger Tides, are maybe small in scale, but that's what makes them all the more fun. And the climax when the sea parts and opens, and when they finally find the Trident, that was spectacular. The visuals still look amazing as ever, and the comedy here, I actually laughed quite a few times in this film because it still keeps the light-hearted tone of the first and fourth film. The one joke that particularly landed with me was when Karina was stripping, and Henry was like, "I saw her ankles," and Jack replies, "You would have seen a lot more if you kept your mouth shut." Yeah, and the ending wraps it all up nicely. Though, if I do have to criticize this is certainly not a perfect movie. I mean, the romance between Karina and Henry was so forced. I'm like, a third romance in this franchise, really? I mean, we didn't need it. Couldn't they just be friends? I mean, before that kiss, they showed literally, yeah. Yeah, before that kiss, they showed literally little romantic chemistry at all. They just acted like friends. I don't know why they had to kiss.
I mean, the only thing that kind of like they related to each other was the fact that they were both going in search of the trident. But other than that, yeah, there wasn't really much there.
Yeah, at least they were connected to that extent. But yeah, you could have totally. Yeah, they did. Yeah, them falling in love was pretty pointless on the whole, and I overall did have a blast with this film in a lot of ways. It is not my personal favorite of the series. I would definitely rank it right in the middle to rank these movies. I still prefer Curse of the Black Pearl on Stranger Tides overall, but this movie is still a good effort, and yeah, I'm glad I saw it. And if this is the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie, then yeah, kudos to everyone. Nice job. So I'm gonna raise it a very high 7 out of 10. So Jack, what are your thoughts on Salazar's Revenge or Dead Men Tell No Tales?
Jack? Hello?
Fucking shit! Joking.
Oh, he's still there then.
I thought it was awful. No, joking. Salazar's Revenge, I agree with Harry. I don't understand the hate that it's getting from the critics. I mean, going into this film, I didn't know what to expect, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, I thought this was a really good return to form, especially after the fourth movie. I mean, it's not, it's definitely not the best of the franchise, but I think it's definitely good wrap up to the series if it is the end. I mean, it probably won't be the end, knowing the studios, because they like to milk franchises, especially Disney. But
the cow still has more milk in her.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think the opening of the film is quite good. We're reintroduced to Jack Sparrow and all again, and I love that seeing the bank heist or whatever. They're like, no one has ever robbed this bank, and then he wakes up and he's like, oh, I forgot, I'm robbing the bank, and they steal the bank, which was hilarious. Like, they basically take the whole bank with them. I mean, this film did get a lot of laughs from the audience, and I think that opening scene is great. Like, they have that new ship now, the dying gull, like, and they basically say,
Black Pearl's in the bottle.
yeah, and they're basically like, yeah, we're done with you, Jack, like, because there's no money in the vault, and I mean, I think the villains here, I think Javier Bardem as Salazar is one of the best villains in the series. I mean, he's not. I mean, I still think Barbosa is better, and maybe I prefer Beckett, but I think Salazar is still very good. Like, I mean, it's interesting to know he actually married Penelope Cruz, who's in the previous film in real life. I mean, no, he's good. I love the way, like, he sort of, like, his speech, like, Captain Jack Sparrow, like the way his
quality. Quite funny. Yeah, the way he sort of slurs the word Captain Foul and all that, like kind of funny. I mean, I think the film is what I like about it is it wraps up a lot of the storylines in the first three films. Like it goes back a lot to the first three films, which I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, the whole backstory of Salazar is interesting. Like Harry said, like the CGI Johnny Depp. I mean, I think the CGI is wasn't bad, but it could have been a little bit better. Like I think they went a little bit overboard with some of the CGI, but it was still pretty good. No, but it's interesting as well that we have Barbosa in this, and you know, he's basically living the high life. Like he's got all this treasure, and you know, he's still got his outfit from the Navy in the previous film. He's sort of living the high life while Jack's kind of on a low. I mean, there's a lot of good humor here, I think. I mean, the film has a sense of humor, which of course isn't a bad thing at all. And I think, you know, I mean, it's interesting that the two characters in this film, I mean, I can understand Harry not liking the romance, but I mean, I think the romance here, while it's not great, I think it's better than the previous romance in On Stranger Tides. I mean, it feels more natural. I mean, the main female character isn't automatically attracted to the male character. She's sort of more independent, and you know, and it's interesting. Like they're gonna hang her for being a witch, and that whole scene's quite funny, where Jack's on the guillotine and like the guillotine's spinning around and nearly trying to cut his head off, which is quite funny. I mean, that whole action scene's quite good. And he's like, "I'm about to have my neck snapped off." He's like, "Well, I'm about to have my neck chopped off." That's good. I mean, it's interesting as well. Like Jack gives away the compass for a bottle of rum, and then he's been sent to the guillotine. And we also have a cameo appearance this time, not by Keith Richards, but by Paul McCartney as his uncle. And actually, there's a line in there when he says, "Skeleton goes to a bar, orders a beer and a mop." That's actually a joke that Al Pacino told Johnny Depp on the set of Donnie Brasco. Like, he told him this joke about skeleton goes to the bar, orders beer and a mop, and they incorporated. Sorry. No, it's a line from Al Pacino, and when I like the stuff as well with Gibbs and all that, and the way it sort of goes on from there. I think the direction here is solid. Like I think the way they tie up the stories of the first three are good. Like the scenes on board the ship, and you see how Jack got his like hat and all that, and how he tricked Salazar, and Salazar sort of on a quest to rid all the pirates from the world, and all that stuff's good. And when they see you know, and I like Salazar as a villain. Like he's quite creepy and sort of ghost crew. Like bits of them are missing and you can't kill them. And I think the ship itself is really cool. It's kind of like a skeleton, like a rib cage thing. And like the bar ships, that's good. I think some of the other stuff is good. Like when they're going on, when they're going to the different locations, and that scene where Jack is, it's a funny scene where Jack's, you know, he's like, "Oh, I just saw her ankle." He's like, "You've seen a lot more. You kept your cake hole shut." And and then when he sends it was kind of funny as well when he sent the undead sharks out. It was kind of reminding me a bit of Jaws, like that scene from Jaws, which was amusing. I think the score here is good as well. I think Barbosa gets a lot more to do here, which is great, and the fact that they're going after the map and she's an astronomer, and there's a funny line there where it's like, "Oh, astronomer, does that mean you something to do with donkeys?" It's like, "You need a donkey." She's like, "No, it doesn't have anything to do with donkeys." And
Jack, I thought that one of the best lines was when she walks into the shop and the guy says, "No woman has ever handled my Herschel."
Yeah.
a witch and a pirate, both in my shop. Like, that was really funny. I mean, it's interesting, his crew sort of leave him and then they go on the ship and the ship's sort of stuck. And you've got those two English Navy guys from the first film, they return, which is nice.
I mean, their return is nice, but also it kind of baffles me. It's like, what? How did they get there? Like, the last time we saw them was in the third movie. They just kind of appeared in the third one. Like, how did they Barbarossa to the Queen Anne's Revenge?
Well, they became pirates at the end of the third one, if you remember.
Yeah, no, but like they weren't in On Stranger Tides, so
yeah. Although they're good, I think Barbarossa gets a lot more to do. Jeffrey Rush. The finale, I think, is great. I mean, Searching for the Trident, Poseidon. I know it's kind of a bit. I mean, the plot's getting a bit predictable at this point, but I don't mind it. The opening scene's good, where the boy sort of, throws himself into the water, and then he finds, his father. And I think the guy who plays his son is good, and the girl is quite good as well. I mean, one thing I will agree with some of the reviewers, there are too many jokes where she's like, "Oh, I'm a woman, I'm a woman," I'm a woman. Like, kind of goes on a bit. I like the scene where Jack is trying to keelhaul him, and she lies to him. He lies to her, and she buys it. And then when you go on the land, and he's like, "Oh, you can't come on land, can you?" And then you see Jack. He's like forced into a marriage. That was really funny. Like that, really disgusting looking woman when he's forced into a marriage. That was hilarious. He's like, "I want her to marry a decent man. I guess you'll have to do, Jack." Like, it's also funny as well when they free the pearl and they throw it into the water and it sinks. It's like, well, she was a great ship, and then the pearl is managed, goes back to its normal size, and it's great to have the pearl back. The finale is good as well. I think Salazar is really good at his backstory, like how Jack tricked him and he died. They sort of out for revenge, and when we see like he's threatening Barbarossa, and it's interesting as well when we find out that the daughter is actually Barbossa's daughter, that it's actually his daughter. And there's a funny line from Jack's like, "How could someone so ugly as you, come up with a girl that beautiful," or whatever. Like, that was funny. And I think this is actually one of the most visually stunning, particularly at the end where you see the ruby and all the diamonds. That's just visually stunning. And the stuff underwater is great. And then they get the trident and they manage to cut the trident. It releases all curses, and like Javier Bardem, Salazar, he's going after Jack, and then you have a finale where they're climbing up the anchor, and Barbarossa basically their father, and then he like gets a sword and Salazar, and he sort of falls and dies. And I mean, it's kind of a shame Barbarossa dies again, but it's the last one in the series. It's not a bad way to wrap it up. And then when they go, and she's like, "Oh, my name's Barbarossa," and then sort of end the film there. And overall, I think the film is a really good entry in the series. I think. I mean, yeah, I forgot to mention the post-credit scene, like the whole nightmare of Davy Jones. I mean, I'm glad that Elizabeth was only in it for one scene. She didn't say anything. I remember always saying that was what was refreshing about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had no
lines.
So, I mean, overall, I think it definitely, if it's the last in the series, it's a good wrap-up. If it's not the last, then it's still a good film anyway. So, I mean, I think Barbarossa gets more to do, which is good. I think the villain's good. The visually stunning characters get more of a story arc. Perhaps a lot of the stuff in the first three films get more backstory in Jack. If I was to rank them, I'd probably rank it maybe second or third. And I'd probably give it 8 out of 10.
Oh, no. Nice. Well, Salazar's Revenge, or Dead Men Tell No Tales. I like this movie. I was surprised how much I liked it, actually. I had my skepticisms. You know, it had been a long time. It had been 6 years since On Stranger Tides. And, you know, again, I'm not with the critics on this one. I really enjoyed this movie. And I think they're just, by this point, they're so fed up of seeing Pirates of the Caribbean movies, even though there's been a long gap between the fourth and the fifth. They're just like, fuck it, you know, write a bad review, you know. It's like, come on, guys, give it a chance. A lot of their critics haven't actually been liable to give. But I really enjoyed Salazar's Revenge. It was a very solid entry into the series. What helps is that it's the shortest of the series and that it goes by so quickly. It breezes by. It's just so much fun. It's back to basics. It's so much fun. It's also satisfying emotionally and also nostalgically because it ties back to the first three movies and it wraps them up. And also, there's some really heartfelt moments in there. Particularly the opening scene with Will and Henry on the Flying Dutchman, which I thought was just a beautiful scene, really heartfelt, really powerful. You really felt sorry for Henry. He's sort of crying out to his father, saying, "I really want you to come home. You know, I've found a way to break your curse." And you know, it's I mean, the whole Trident of Poseidon idea is a little bit formulaic, but and I love that the film is about sort of Henry's journey to sort of free his father. That's nice. And also the same could be said for Karina, and that's what connects the two of them, is that they're both there with their fathers. And obviously discovering that Barbossa is her father was quite an unexpected twist. And, you know, that was very emotional when he sacrificed himself for her at the very end, and he killed Salazar in the process as well. There was a beautiful line when she says, "What am I to you?" and he says, "Treasure." I thought that was absolutely lovely. That was so right. And, you know, when he killed Salazar as well, the music was lovely, and the slow motion shot of him falling was great, and the shock on her face was amazing. Really great reaction there. I think the movie's just paced phenomenally. It's paced so well. The action is awesome. I love the pace. I think that is so much fun. The guillotine scene is also hilarious when Jack is sort of stuck on guillotine, swinging around constantly. When Karina is nearly hung and Henry catches her, and he's like, "We are to be allies." And she's like, "Considering where your left hand is," I say, "We're more than that." We don't see all of the humor is really good. Or, well, in that scene it is anyway. There is some nice humor. It's the Johnny Depp performance. I would say, I think he spends too long for this movie, and you know, being the sort of drunken wastrel fool. There's not really any time when he's that serious until the end, really, when Barbossa dies. So it's it's his weakest. Also, the writing hasn't really helped. They're running out of ideas for lines to give him, and also the things for him to do. I mean, he's quite funny when he's you know, there's this constant joke of him like expecting his crew, everyone to pay him for doing stuff for him. You know, I mean, which is all right. That's not a bad joke. The characters, other than Jack Sparrow, Henry, he's all right. I like the character very much, but the actor Brendan Thwaites, he needs to work on his accent. His English accent isn't the best, but he gives an all right performance. It's an acceptable performance, I guess. Karina was much more interesting. Scodelario. I've not actually seen her in anything else, but apparently Skins and stuff. So she's sort of done bits here and there. I liked her in Pirates 5. I thought she was very good, and she sort of stole the show, obviously, as the main sort of female character. And she's attractive too. I'm not gonna lie. You know, she's easy on the eyes. Yeah, and obviously her revelation, discovering that her Barbossa was her father, was good, and I thought she played on that very well. Barbossa himself, like you, I didn't really understand why until the later stages But he's good. He's good in this film, and he has some good scenes with Captain Salazar as well. Which Salazar, Javier Bardem is incredibly creepy as always as Salazar. He doesn't really do much physically until about halfway in the movie when they have a bit of a sea battle when he goes on board the ship and him and Jack have a very brief fight. Yeah, and I think just the visual effects are absolutely amazing. This is probably one of the most visually impressive of the series, just because his crew, and I mean, like the ghost crew, and him, the way he's got his hair floats and everything, and sort of the black sort of ink that comes from his teeth is like, it's really, really creepy. It works a treat. The music score is good by Jeff Sinelli, even though it's mostly all rehashed from the other films, but I don't mind that because the music from the other movies was amazing, or at least their variations of other themes. Yeah, the pace of the movie is tremendous, and it helps that it's the shortest, which is why I put it above At World's End in my ranking. It's because it's so much shorter and it just breezes by so quickly. And the backstory regarding Jack and Salazar, it was good, even though there wasn't much to it. It was still good, and it's nice to see CGI 20-year-old man. So I guess that was. But yeah, the film isn't perfect. It is very short. The Johnny Depp performance is wearing very thin now, and I think someone else should take the lead. I just don't think the story is anything groundbreaking. I mean, I love how it ties in with the first three movies and how it wraps them up, particularly with Will and Elizabeth cameos. And I was glad that they were just cameos, because having them in for the majority would have really overshadowed the story. But thankfully, they were just cameos. So I thought their inclusions were warranted and they were right. But the actual plot regarding the Trident of Poseidon is like too many people going after this for different reasons. Like, why is Barbossa going after the Trident? He has no reason to go after the Trident. It's like, what the hell? There's no need. Why does he make a deal with Salazar? There's no need for that. Also, that witch woman, who the hell is she? How did she get the compass? The compass on the bar, the worktop in the bar, and yet she just managed to grab it instantly. I don't get that. How she got the how she got the compass. And just some of the humor doesn't really hit home. It's something. I mean, it's good enough, but some of the humor it just doesn't hit. It doesn't translate very well. I think this is one of the lightest installments, actually, even though there's darker and creepy elements with Salazar. It never loses its lighter touch. I do think that Johnny Depp probably should call it a day now and pass the lead, if they are going to continue the franchise, pass the leading role to someone else. Not Jack Sparrow, but just another character should take the lead. It might change the dynamic of the series, but it might be a welcome change. Who knows? I love the production design. I think it's great. It's big and epic and spectacular. I kind of like the CGI, even though there are some obvious green screen shots. The direction by Joachim running and Espen Sandberg. I've never seen any of their other movies, but they did a good job here. They injected a bit more heart into this one, which is what I liked. Over on Stranger Tides, which was just a remarkably ordinary, average installment, this had a little bit more substance to it, which is why I prefer it on Stranger Tides, and it has a better pace than on Stranger Tides. Like I said, the opening scene was a good highlight, and the end of the film as well, when Karina and Henry are on the island, and then Will comes back, and then also Elizabeth appears very briefly, which is nice. I think that's a great wrap up, and the post-credit scene is nice and interesting for a possible tease for Davy Jones's return. As much as I love Davy Jones, I don't think it would be necessary for him to come back. His story is pretty much done. I mean, he had two films. He had two films to tell his story. There was no need do it again. The short film, it's like 2 hours 10 minutes, if that, and I think it benefits from being that short. And it kind of feels refreshing that because there's two directors this time and it's very different. Also, Jack's crew, a nice Scrum returns, which is good. Also, the little guy from the first three, Marty, he returns, as well as Mr. Gibbs. Gibbs is kind of good. Gibbs is good as well. Yeah, I think this is a fun movie. So I'm going to score Salazar's Revenge / Dead Men Tell No Tales. Yeah, and I also like the action climax in the underwater when they're fighting Salazar over the trident, and then Henry breaks the trident. It is actually very quickly over, though. It is very quick, but it's followed then by an emotional sacrifice. So that, yeah, and also the wedding scene was funny when Jack was nearly betrothed to that woman, and then they get the black pearl out of the bottle, which is funny. If this is to be the last one, then I'm happy. If it's not to be the last one, I'm also, whatever happens with this franchise, I'll continue to, if it carries on, I'll continue to watch it until it starts to get back. At the moment, it's on good ground. I'm happy with the 5 films. I'm happy with this new one. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. We've talked about all 5 movies. So Harry, just for people who haven't seen your video, how do you rank the 5 movies?
Oh, I agree. This is an underrated franchise. I can see why it's one of, the highest grossing, most successful in Hollywood history, because it's an absolute ton of fun. It only does have 2 duds, being Dead Man's Chest at World's End, but the rest of them I can definitely greatly enjoy. And they are, especially the first film was a worthy adaptation of the ride. Walt Disney would be very proud of it if he had gotten to see it. So my ranking of the 5 would be, guys, you're probably gonna hate me for this, but at number 5 at the bottom at World's End, then number 4, Dead Man. Then number 4, Dead Man's Chest. Oh dear, and number 3, Dead Men Tell No Tales or Salazar's Revenge, and number 2 on Stranger Tides. Very, very surprising to everybody, and at number 1, of course, most favourites, The Curse of the Black Pearl. So how would you guys rank these movies?
Well, Jack, what would your ranking be?
Number 5, Dead Man's Chest. Number 4, On Stranger Tides. Number 3, World's End. Number 2, Salazar's Revenge. And number 1, Curse of Black Pearl. Although that might change when I do my ranking video.
Oh, interesting. And as for me, if you haven't watched my ranking video, number 5 for me is On Strange Tides. Sorry, Harry. Number 4, and number 3 is Salazar's Revenge / Dead Men Tell No Tales. Number 2 is The Curse of the Black Pearl. Man's Chest, but opinions are opinions. So Harry, just before we close off, what is your overall franchise, and what would you like to see happen in the future? Would you like it to continue? Would you like it to end? Or you're not fussed either way?
I actually wouldn't mind if they do end this franchise right here. I don't see how they could really continue the story with a 6th film. I mean, it would just basically be the return of Davy Jones if he is gonna come back, but that's just to force the return of a old villain, just to basically get viewers' attention, to get butts in seats, really, without much purpose. So I don't think a 6th film is necessary. Personally, I think 5 movies is enough. But but I can enjoy 3 of the 5 movies greatly. So yeah, if they just end it here, I'll be satisfied.
Fair enough. What about you, Jack?
I think, yeah, overall, I like the series. The first one, I think, is the best. Second one, not a big fan of. The third one, really like. Fourth one's good, but not great. And the fifth one is a solid end to the series. And I hope the fifth one is the last one, because I agree with what you said, Ollie. Like, there's no point bringing Davy Jones back. His story was done. He was killed at the end of the third film, so there's no point bringing him back except for money. So
Are you okay, Jack? You sound a little bit. It might just be me, but you sound a little bit upset. Are you okay?
No, I'm fine. It's just I have to keep my voice down.
Oh right, sorry, I misunderstood there.
Yeah. No. I think that they shouldn't make a sixth one because there's nowhere else really to go with the series. So I think 5 is good enough. I mean, they made enough at the box office anyway, and if the critics are panning them this much, you think Disney would just like, okay, we'll call it a day. So hopefully it's the last one. If it isn't, I'll keep watching the series until it gets really bad. But hopefully, I think this is a good film to end on. So, and you don't need to bring Davy Jones back.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. I mean, although I don't really mind if the series carries on. I mean, as long as the films are good, it's the main thing. I don't know how they can continue the story, but if they do, I'll watch it and I'll see what I think. But I do think this is a good film to end on if they are going to close off the series. I think the fifth one is a nice wrap up. It's it's kind of going back to what we all liked in the first one. It was a simplistic, fun romp, and it also links to the other films very nicely. And there's not really you can take the story as well, because the Johnny Depp character and wearing a little bit thin now. So I think it's about time they either brought some fresh blood in or just ended the series. Do another one. I think a sixth one is in the plans, but we'll see where it goes. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Is there anything anybody wants to say before we close off?
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me.
Aye, and we all. Anything you want to say, Harry, before we end?
Pirate's life.
Fair enough. I'll take that as a compliment.
Thug life.
Oh,
God.
Dog life.
Can you imagine if Jack Sparrow met Captain Pugwash and the Black Pig?
Cool. I should replace Jack Sparrow with Captain Morgan for the next one.
Phil Mitchell becomes Captain Barbossa.
Oh yeah, pirate's life for me. On that note, thank you guys all for watching and listening. Stay tuned for future reflections, and until then, I'm Mr. Thomas 11. This is Harry. This is Jack, and see you.